States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kim, would you please take roll?
Absolutely. Dr. Breckenridge-Pettit.
Here.
Dr. Hill.
Here.
Mr. Hobbs.
Here.
Mrs. Pascal. Here. Ms. Schickman. Here. She's. I don't know why. I changed my order.
Okay.
Flying blind here. Mrs. Lundberg. Here. Did I get everyone? Sorry, I'm
Sorry that I
trying to note your pen. And Mrs. Schickman. Did I get you all? Thank you. Sorry. Good day. Okay. All are accounted for. And Mr. Smith is not present today.
Okay, do we have any board member comments?
I do.
Karen.
I would like, since when I joined, or became a director in November, I saw our strategic plan, and I was like, how could you guys ever manage this? How could you make this a reality? And I am so impressed with this board and our superintendent and our budget. I mean, finance, everybody that I have met and worked with, I was absolutely amazed. The principals, the teachers. Wow, good job. I can't believe how successful what you've done in such a short amount of time in 1 year. So anyway, congratulations on all your hard work. I think it paid off.
Thank you, Karen. Anybody else? Mandy.
I was just gonna say I got to attend almost every graduation that last week. So that was a little busy, but I went to Crest, HEA, the high school, and Longfellow. And that was really fun just to be able to be in the schools, hear the principals, hear the teachers, see all the kids, how excited they were. The little Longfellow kids were all just crying and crying and crying, like not wanting to leave their teachers. So that was really cute. And then it was also really exciting. I hadn't been to HEA's graduation before, but to just hear all of those kids talk about their stories and how much that school means to them, and how really that was the pathway between education or no education for almost all of them. So it makes me excited to be working more on this budget and getting them moved into this building, because their current facility is really subpar for education, and I feel like they deserve a lot better than what they have. So.
I have a couple of comments. I'm taking the advice of Kim Letourneau, and so I'm thanking people. Firstly is Nancy Jones from the business office, 22 years. She's helped us, obviously everyone that's hired in our district, but I'm a Dingbat sub, and so she helped me transition to the Time Clock Plus app, which was not smooth. Next, Will, thank you. We are in the best shape for hiring in my 5 years of experience, and you've been creative and you've got really good quality candidates. So thank you for that. My Gen Xer birthday buddy, Evelyn, she's such an asset, from the bus rodeo to getting the teachers, our alternative schools certified for the little buses. She's our regional rep within CDOT for highway safety, etc. The bus rodeo, she's the best in the state, bar none, without question. So I'm really thankful for her. Josh and Jake, where did they go?
No.
Okay. They're doing the dark web, right?
Fiber.
Like fiber, not the dark web, not the dark web. Okay.
Fiber.
The dark fiber, those packets of ones and zeros. It was so exciting to read the board report about that and how much progress that they have made within their budget. And then Sheila Moore is making a professional transition from business manager to grants. Thank goodness we have somebody on grants, as Matt mentioned. So I'm just really thankful for her commitment to this district. Anybody else? No. There was one written message to the board, and I think Ben might be the only one who hasn't seen it. It's a thank you note.
I did see it. I just passed it.
Okay. Oh, you were passing it to Mandy. Okay. And it was a thank you note. I do not think there are any public comments. Okay. Don't have a card. Next is to approve the agenda, and I don't think we have any changes, if you can believe it.
One small modification to item 5F, just clarifying which budget year that resolution is attached to. It's the 23-24 appropriations resolution. Just to clarify that. It's not really a change.
It's just, it's not a change, but a highlight.
Just, yeah.
Okay, the one, that's what we just finished, but we're creating a resolution for it.
That's one because we had to
Oh,
account for
yes,
the
yes.
net or the 0%.
Zero loan from the
Yep.
state. Okay, so there's no changes.
So,
Okay, at this time, it's guest reports. Matt.
sorry,
Oh.
this is my mistake. It's been a long day. I just need to get a motion. We need to
Oh, we need to
formally
move it.
approve.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
We have a motion to approve the agenda. Thank you. A second? Thank you, Karen.
Oh my goodness, this is my, again,
It's okay. We've got time.
trying to quit my coffee. Dr. Breckenridge Pettit.
Aye.
Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs.
Right.
Mrs. Lundberg.
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
Ms. Strickland.
Aye.
All right, we're moving now to 2, and we're on to guest reports, which is from CMC. Take it away, Matt. Oh, he does need a microphone. Yeah.
You don't,
And here's the camera right here.
you don't have to
Matt,
hold it.
so-
You can just set it on the table next to you.
No, I think it's okay. Most people prefer to stand off screen and just let everyone on YouTube
Dave,
stare at
come
us.
over here in case there are comments. We'll put it in the middle of us here. Thank you. Thank you, members of the board, for inviting us to share a few words. We obviously had a little bit of time with you to discuss a number of items with the college, but we'll give a brief overview for the members of the public and those that are joining us online. So I'm Matt Janashi from Colorado Mountain College. I don't work in Salida. I work in Glenwood Springs. We are a system of campuses, so we have 11 campuses throughout the mountain region. Our headquarters, if you will, called Central Services, is located in Glenwood Springs. So I'm invited to come join you. It just happened to be a day that I had to go to Denver anyway, so on my way back, just a little bit further south, and then back up over Independence Pass, and I'll be home. So easy enough. I'm currently the Chief Operating Officer. In 2 weeks, July 1st, or give or take, I'll become the next president of the college. So thank you to Dave and others who have appointed me as the incoming president. But I've been with the college for over 10 years. So with all of you throughout the Salida annexation process. Joined by Dave Armstrong, a member of our board of trustees, as well as by Rob Simpson, who is our associate dean who runs the Salida operations on behalf of the college. And how about just for the sake of brevity and to make sure that we cover the highlights for the Salida community, let me turn it over to Rob. He can cover some of what's happening here, and then I'll cover some of the items that are happening with the board and from the central office that are germane to some of your future conversations. But let me turn it over to Rob for some highlights on Salida.
And I'm going to try not to repeat a bunch of things that I just said a half an hour ago. So I'll mention a few things that I think are noteworthy. Number one, many of you know Fred Maxwell, who taught at Salida High School for 14 years, came over to CMC 2 years ago, has been an absolute gem, and the internship program is, I would put it up against any work-based learning program in the state of Colorado in terms of what those students are getting in terms of work experience. One of the cool things that happened this year is Fred applied in partnership with a number of local small businesses for some funding through the WIBLIP program, which stands for the Work-Based Learning Incentive Program. And based on what we've heard from them, very few entities around the state of Colorado applied for that. And we ended up getting funding for 6 local businesses, and then they came back to us and said, you should apply for more. And so the last count is either 11 or 13 local businesses that have each gotten a check for $6,000 to $6,500. And that is directly to acknowledge the work that they put in to support a local high school internship student. So that includes businesses like Woodland Motel and CPW and a local law firm and a number of other 6 Line Metal and a number of other local small businesses that just got a check from the state of Colorado to say thank you for supporting local high school students in work-based learning opportunities. So that's been a big win for us. As I mentioned, I believe that we had 172 concurrent enrollment students from Salida High School and HEA taking concurrent enrollment courses this last semester. David mentioned this, but I'll circle back around to it as well. We just found out a couple of weeks ago that we were awarded the concurrent enrollment expansion and innovation grant again for this coming academic year, which is $50,000. 2.5 teachers from Salida High School will be utilizing that to pursue graduate degrees so they can teach concurrent enrollment courses. And then in addition, we did something that I think is pretty unique. We created 3 stipend positions to support 3 different initiatives that we're trying to kind of nudge forward, and they just needed someone to be a champion of those. So one of those, as David mentioned, is the Ascent program. We went from 3 students at Salida High School that were in the Ascent program this year to either 9 or 10 in the coming year. And we just need someone to shepherd those students and to make sure that they're staying on track academically and be checking in with them. And yeah, I'll stop there.
Rob, I have a question before you transition
Yeah.
over. The 172 students, is that 172 different students, and they could be taking one class, or they could be taking that average of 2 or 3 classes?
Yeah.
So we don't know how many classes within that 172, but they're at least taking one.
Correct.
That's what I needed. Thank you.
And that was 172 in the spring semester. So there's probably some unique students that took a course in the fall that aren't captured in that number. So I'm guessing that's probably up into the 180s.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Dave, any other updates you want to get on Salida? From Salida, for Salida?
Well, I would add a little bit to what you said earlier, Matt, about Salida is the first district to come into CMC in over 25 years. And so I think that speaks volumes to who we are here in Salida and the Salida School District. And kudos to the community for stepping up again and supporting that with their tax dollars. But with the concurrent enrollment and the internship program, you've got businesses and the economy and community at large just raving about the opportunity to get these students and work with them and have a shot at keeping some students. And Rob's got some success stories around that. So CMC is excited to move forward in Salida and excited to have the support of the school board and school district in this partnership.
Rob, you want one more?
I just wanted to mention one other sort of fun thing. I was just sharing this with Jody right before we jump back into session, but we have some grant money that's going to expire in September, and we don't want to give that money back. And so one of the creative things we did this summer was to offer scholarship spots for any local students that wanted to participate in the fire camp up in Maysville. So a student can go up there and take S-130 and S-190 and get their red card, which qualifies them to be a wildland firefighter. So we had 4 local students take us up on that opportunity. And we had 2 that just finished the first fire camp, and then the other 2 are taking that in July. And I got a text from a parent of a student on Sunday night that said, my son just got back, and I know this young person, and he's not one to gush about anything. And he was like, he can't stop talking about how awesome fire camp was. So I think some of those little wins are hard to measure, but like those things matter. And that sort of helped me go to sleep with a smile on my face Sunday night, thinking like that was just something we did. Like we called the grant administrator, said, can we use some of this money for this? She said, yeah. We jumped through a bunch of hoops, and then here we are. So
One more thing. One of the legs of CMC's new strategic plan through 2030 is called innovation. And the challenge that we have, in my opinion, in this community is to how we integrate with how this community is growing and how this community wants to grow. So, should we be heavier in technology training, some kind of remote work kinds of platforms? Should we do more with manufacturing and fading west kinds of things? What do we want to be when we grow up? because we do have that choice to make now. We won't have it tomorrow. So that's the challenge we've got. And as everybody sitting here knows that CMC is funded 70+% with taxpayer dollars. So our focus is on the community, what the community needs. But sometimes communities don't know what they don't know either. So there's a communication that has to happen there. So I'm, I guess, going on the record here with the newspaper that we need to figure that out sooner rather than later.
So I know you have a meeting to get to for the rest of the evening, but let me finish or offer a few comments on behalf of sort of the central office. And I was a part of the initial effort to go through the process with the board to help Salida annex into the district. And what I'll say is, it's just some of the little pieces you've heard already. We're in our 5th year, we're entering into our 5th year in this relationship, in the formal relationship. And nearly every goal we set in those initial projections back in 2019, 2020, when we were sort of thinking about what would it look like if we were 5 years out and we were successful, they've been exceeded. Like every one of the numbers are higher, the graduations are higher, the number of degrees that are offered through the programming is higher. And now we're at a point where we would like to find a permanent home for the college. And so I think that's, and now that we've reached that sort of level of maturity as an institution in the Salida region, our finances are stable. We understand how that works. We understand what our students are needing, what our partners want, and how to support them. And to continue to do that, we are hopeful that we can find a way to ensure that CMC has a permanent site in the district. And so, to that end, obviously, David and I we extended the current lease arrangement with the college for the Kestner building through September. So we have some time while we enter into a process to explore whether that site can become a home for CMC in the long run. Look at them.
Yes, you may.
I don't know how to quantify this, but I think it might be helpful for you all to understand, like on any given day, I'm going to guess that 50% of the students that are coming in and through the doors of the Kestner building are your students. Like that's students coming over to take a microbiology course or to take a leadership course or to take the internship class. HEA calls us all the time to say, hey, can we use the Kestner building for this testing day or this unique thing? And our answer 99% of the time is yes. And so a lot of what's happening in that space, and it will at some point, level out in a different direction. Right now is directly benefiting Salida High School and HEA students, because they're coming over and benefiting. And I'm assuming in some way that serves as a pressure release valve for what happens at Salida High School and what happens at HEA too. So I think that's worth noting. If you want me to try and quantify that at some point, I can do a deep dive into some numbers and try and figure out how to do that. But
We ask you to deep dive into it.
You tell me.
All right. Do any board members have any questions or comments? David.
I just want to say thanks. Years ago, when we started cooking up how to deepen the relationship with CMC, I just think our community as a rural Colorado community is actually kind of giving hope to so many other Colorado communities that there is a way to do it together. And so I feel like over the last 5 years, we gambled and you guys have delivered on everything as partners. You guys have pushed us. You've allowed us to push you. And our kids are better off than they were beforehand. And I am deeply appreciative as a superintendent and community leader that CMC was willing to take that journey and explore something that it was kind of in the dusty archives as an option. We pulled that forward in your knowledge. And I just want to say thanks to the board of directors. I think you've chosen a great new president and pushing Dr. Gene Eschi forward. I couldn't be more happy as a partner in that sense.
Thanks.
Amen. Amen. Before we go on to district reports, I want to acknowledge Bruce and Linda Cairns. Few have given more to CMC and the Salida School District, but they are giving more. Because Linda made cookies. Mandy is her child, and then of course Ben Cairns is their child. So take a cookie in addition to that. All right, district reports. That is David and team.
Yeah, I don't want to take too much time because most of the agenda is kind of our reports and our
Yes.
work, so I won't take too much time. I want to give big thanks to our staff. I think again they delivered on behalf of our community, the parents, everything else. You saw a record number of graduates at HEA. And I think that's well worth mentioning. As the HEA continues to mature in its programming, it's still a fairly young program from a systems standpoint. And so I also want to just mention, we saw a great graduating class leave us at Salida High School. And it is a unique class. So I just want to give some public, because it was the last class we allowed some early graduations. So we saw a large exodus. It was the last class on the old graduation requirements. So they had far lower bar, where the board did deep work and said, we are expecting some more. And so that kind of changes. And that was also the class that faced COVID the most deeply, where parents were having to make very difficult decisions in 2021 of where they would send their kids, and all those families, those consequences. And that, so you saw a class, because that class was smaller. I just mentioned it. We're working on facilities. That class was around 74. If you don't account for all the early graduations and all the different COVID-like stories, your next class is 104, 109, 114. So you'll, just to give you a sense of kind of the space of the classes coming into SHS and what we can expect to see at that. So, and I did want to mention, I'm excited that we have 9 students, possibly 10, in the Ascent program, which is that 5th year program for students where they are our students, but they're going full-time college. It's kind of a win-win and a partnership between higher ed and Colorado K-12. And so just want to make sure I mention that. We're excited to see that program expand as our kids find options without having to leave home in order to do that.
I know you were saying this as I walked in, but what is so we get paid for them as a student and then we pay CMC?
Well, CMC is our most common partner, but Ascent could be for any college in the state of Colorado. For it, just take CMC. They could go and live at Steamboat, and that's where they're all the time, but they're our student. So they would walk with their class at the end of their senior year. We would withhold their diploma, and that 5th year, we would pay their tuition. So a full-time student, we'd pay their tuition, but we would also count them as a full-time student for us. And so kind of everyone wins financially in that situation. It's a great move the legislator made to support kids continuing on.
University or
Any university.
any public? Okay.
Yep. They can enter into that. If you get further away from CMC, then there's extra things that have to be discussed.
Right.
But yes is the answer to that question. It does not have to be just CMC, Salida, or they're a Salida student at Salida CMC, right? There are more options, even CU Boulder and things like that.
Is there prerequisites for the kids, or?
There's regulatory things that have to be hit, and that's what I'm saying. If you kind of move outside of that, I'm just going to be a full freshman somewhere else versus that 5th year senior kind of program, then those people have to do the regulations. We'll kind of sift through it, but it's always something for community or families, parents to think through.
Matt, in general, they've had to show former success with the CMC class, right? There's not it's kind of a sliding situation here. It's Salida CMC campus.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, any questions about the district that's not covered for the rest of the agenda? Okay, so may I call for a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Matt. A second?
Second.
And now I discuss, right? Is there any comments or discussion about the consent agenda? Okay, Mandy,
No, I think discussion.
yeah, we're in the discussion section.
Okay. So my question is just that HR handbook.
Yes.
Did we ever see that? Is that still on here to approve? Should we table that and approve it later? Or did I miss it?
It should have been shared for you. If you were not able to get it, we were glad to put it on hold until August, but it was shared with you through a link because it was on our S drive, or it's kind of a live Google document in that sense. So if it didn't come through in the board packet and it was a mistake, glad to table that.
I
We were
may be,
working on
I
it,
may
and it
be the
was-
only one
yeah.
that didn't see it. Did you guys see
No,
it?
it might not have made it. Will and
Okay.
I had talked. We just want to make sure we had the most updated.
Then I'd recommend you go ahead and pull that and table it. If you guys haven't had a chance to review that, it doesn't seem fair.
Okay, I agree.
Any other discussion items? So Matt, would you modify your motion to take out H and move that to August, the handbook?
Yes. Approve the consent agenda. Three subsection H.
Okay, excellent. Any more discussion about consent agenda items? May we call vote?
Wait, so. All right, Dr. Breckenridge Pettit.
Aye.
Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs. Mrs. Lumberg. Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
Ms. Schickman. Motion carried.
Motion carries. Now we have 4 discussion items. Kim, will you help me? Do we need to have a motion to be able to discuss those? Or we can just go into discussion.
Dig right in.
Okay, David, 4A, end of year reporting regarding the 23-24 board strategic priorities.
Yeah, I would love to. I would bring out something though that we found interesting because the internet was gone all day today,
Here we go.
right? We went and dug through boxes and did manual labor and purged records from like looking through like 1920s on, and I found this, right?
Relationships.
Strategic priorities. And I think it's a different style of presenting, but actually I think it's worth mentioning. When you get to a board and we talk about our strategic priorities, they will be this, most of them are the same 10 years from now. Policy, right? Fostering relationships, listening to people, planning, right? Finances, keeping me accountable and my team accountable to doing what we say we'll do. But it made me laugh when I saw it. Because next year when we're setting priorities, right, they're going to be policies, facilities, finances, right, leadership,
and
that
evidence,
piece, and just general planning and trying to set a vision for everyone else so they know which direction to head, and getting clear as we can on vision stuff. So I just thought that was an interesting find today, so we thought we'd bring that forward. I don't know if anybody wanted a hard copy. I printed a couple extra of this end of the year report. Does anyone want that? Need that? I don't want to spend time. I did send you a long video, and I hate doing that, but there's just so much to celebrate. We focused on finances. I'm very happy with the budget that you'll be approving later tonight, because I believe that we're no longer on those big federal grants that kept us afloat through the pandemic. We're back to that 100%. Basically, what's coming in is what's going out. We still are getting grants. I don't want to say we're not using grants because you have about $3.5 million we operate off in grants a year. I don't know if I did send that in one of my updates. It's a fascinating. It is not a small amount when you're talking about a $20 million budget plus $3.5 million. That is a lot of our people getting their salaries out of those grants. Those just tend to be the more stable ones, like Head Start grant. Right, that's not a competitive one-time thing. That's a kind of sustainable world. But I just want to be clear about that. So finances, I am so thrilled with the work we'll do. The transition plan we have between Sheila and Aaron, I think, has worked great. Allowed us to do deep analysis. I don't know if anybody wants to comment or questions around finances, since that was a big, huge piece.
I mean, I just think you've done a great job, Aaron. Really appreciate it. And I think a lot of it is, it's been great to have the extra time with Sheila and you both working to dig into everything. But I'm excited to have more of a financial plan and vision and way to budget moving forward.
It's awesome.
Plans. Yeah.
I like all the data.
And we'll be working over the summer once he gets through audit stuff when we come back to our August kind of restart of the year, to say, hey, here's the financial and here's some documents we think that'll help you keep us accountable. So we're working on some better ways to generate the conversation. But I think overall, big success. Facilities, of course, our master facility plan is out there for review. And I think most people appreciate that there's a plan and people are doing that. Now we're trying to walk through the most up-to-date things. Is there anybody who has questions or comments around facilities that you want to dig into? Super happy about this. There's delays and that stuff, but there's not really,
Okay.
in the short term, they might be frustrating delays because you want to see these things done. And yet in the long term, we're working with multi-agency, multi-governments, multi-elected boards on lots of projects. So it is going on a very good clip, and I appreciate everyone engaging in the community. And then we'll go with operations. That was a big push coming out of the pandemic, getting those stables. Mr. Waddell has done an awesome job of stabilizing those departments in those sense. I don't know if anybody wants to talk about UPK. That's not a small thing we tackled. I want to let you know that UPK, the 3-year-olds, that funding for next year was a question mark.
Mhm.
We feel very confident that that will come. So that'll come into the amended budget. There's additional revenues there because that was realized.
It might work out. Yeah.
Right? So that's an exciting one for year 2 of UPK. Of course, Teresa Gilson was a brand new principal, and she navigated that. She's not new to this team, but just to compliment her in her first year to navigate that. Your nutrition and Andrea, we had over 300,000 we thought we'd have to subsidize that department, and it ended up half of that, around 150, 165,000 was the subsidy, is what it looks like. I mean, we're a month early to call that out, but that's a super, when we were doing free food for all, and nobody knew what that was, compliments to them. And
that's our average, right?
yeah,
It's
it's back to what
back
we used to be
what we
paying
used to
for. So I think now we can dial in excellence. Will, do you want to add?
And that'll tighten up, I think, a little bit more as we've done some different things with some systems as far as purchasing and buying and buying some agreements with some local farmers and things. I think just the systems and the menus are what vary your prices, and we've got those kind of locked in. So it's not the same food every day. It may be the same food the second Tuesday of every March, but you won't remember what you had last year on this same day. So they're making some progress there. And I think Andrea will continue to cut that number down.
And I'm just proud. 12 months ago, we couldn't operate our kitchens,
And now they're stable.
right? Commodities were all over the place. We had no way to predict any of our food costs. So if we're running a kitchen, it's really great news. So I'm very proud of them. The technology piece right now, we're getting a whole new infrastructure. It's going to be done in time before July 1. And we figured out how to pay for the whole thing. I mean, it's super exciting. And that'll help us when the internet goes down in town. We'll be able to stand on our own. Like in a day like today, we would have been able to continue to operate, which matters when we talk about security issues. Those things can come into play in those when your technology or info technology isn't available. It can get in the way of those things. So we're excited about that. Maintenance, just very excited to see that multi-year wish list, that to be able to say, okay, we can plan now. We're not going to be surprised by a track or a roof or even more coming out of the pandemic, back to that long-term view of we can push that one off. There's some good maintenance, preventative maintenance. We can push that project off so we don't get hit with as many. And so I'm happy about that. We do with the communication system. You get a whole new website, whole new application. You got your annual report out this year. Those were some big things. So I'm very excited. You already mentioned staffing, where many of our kind of colleagues across the state are still desperately struggling to fill positions. We're in a good spot. Like the ECC, from almost my whole 13 years here, has always been in crisis. They're not in crisis right now. They're in a very good space. So kudos to principals and Will on that piece. The bargaining team, we did get through a lot. I know there's a lot more to talk about on that piece. And I deeply appreciate that our community was able to put elected officials. You guys do not all think the same. And you definitely don't rubber stamp things. And yet you guys are an amazing board that stays rational. Your agenda is the kids and the community. And you guys have done a great job of struggling through hard things. And so it's great to have Ms. Lundberg on the team now. But I think while a lot of other communities struggle with board elections, we did not. So I'm thankful for that piece. Policy audit. And I'm going slow here, but these are big things. The lawyers almost were betting to say there's no way we could get through as much as we did. And we did. And we found a way. And so I'm glad of that. And next year we'll finish that project. So I don't know operations, if there's anybody else wants to add questions, comments.
See, that alone is amazing. Okay.
That's right. That's what you were talking about in your
Yes.
board member comments.
Yes.
A couple of things. The first one is for Karen. In general, in August, at our August grind, formerly called an August retreat, we work with this and we arm wrestle as a team about what should be our focus in each of these quad areas. So start thinking about where those lie. I've already started mine, and I have some chicken scratch on what some big ideas that I'm hoping for. Okay, so make sure you get your homework done. And then for my peers, this is what, Jen, would you like to? Oh. Well, no, that's not till August. But the reason I started my chicken scratch is because I wanted to share something that I do. This is our third year. I know we evaluate David as a group in January, but once he turns this in, I evaluate him on the progress of those things between the target and the narrative. And I ask for a meeting, and we sit down, and I highlight greens, yellows, and reds, and kind of give grades and ask him to put it into his file. So if you guys are interested in doing that, I find it reassuring, just so I know what it's impressive and he got good grades. But that's something that you guys can do.
I passed the Dr. Pettit evaluation. It was
Only
good.
just. Yeah, here we go.
I am just in that same thing, right? Today, it's just how do we do in the year? And we did amazing this year in all of these areas. Not that we did amazing everything, or everything is perfect or any of that kind of silliness. Right. And the next thing would be, again, that August grind, as you mentioned it, we're coming back. So because there's still gaps, so there's still things we want to move forward. This is a great time in the summertime to say, hey, David, let's grab a cup of coffee. I want to really think about some ideas that have been kicking through my head, or some things I'm hearing in my neighborhood or in my circle of friends or people I feel like I represent. This is a great time to take that and do your chicken scratch in that sense. Academics, I think you'll again see us at the top of the state. Well, I have no reason to suspect that. And one of the main reasons that I think you'll again see us one of the best districts in the state as per the test scores is we had one of the lowest discipline years we've had in the last 10 years. And there's a direct correlation to a kid who is bored and not engaged learns less than a kid that is engaged. And kids that are engaged tend to not get in trouble. So it's just one of those side metrics that we look at. I bring that up because I think it's important over the summer to also start to say, now that we're not trying to stabilize, we're not trying to recover from pandemic, we're pursuing excellence, is what are the metrics that we could use? Because it keeps us as a board and central office at that kind of 30,000 foot level. We're saying we're looking for these outcomes and versus getting into the weeds. But if we don't have metrics, then it's harder. And it's also hard sometimes to take soft skills stuff and turn it into numbers. So, there's some different things. I'll be bringing some ideas back, but I would encourage you over the summer to think about what are the metrics where you feel like they would be good accountability things of, okay, you're compliant or that's good versus I'm looking for excellence in this area. Right? If you do organizational change, you can't be perfect in all areas. So academics is always on here, and I'm excited to see some of the gains we made across the district. High school, middle school made some significant changes to programming. I think they're continuing to make those. I was proud of them and the growth they made for those things. I think one of the struggles we have in academics is we're good year in and year out, right? So it's hard to really justify and find that drive to say we're going to keep pursuing better, even though we're doing better than almost everyone else in the state. But are we competitive nationally? Are we competitive globally? I think we need to start to ask some of those bigger questions. I think we've stabilized this level of excellence. How else? What are the other metrics we need to look at? Because I just think that's the next thing for us to start to ask. Anybody want to questions, comments on academics and that thing, or anything else in this end of year report? I don't want to use up too much of your time this evening, but tons to celebrate.
Okay, good job. All right, let's, for B, C, and D, these aren't voting. issues, we will have a discussion and then direct David to bring us something in August. But they're the hot and spicy ones from this last academic year. So let's turn to B, options for staff input regarding policy GBBN, staff involvement in decision making. So this is there are many avenues for faculty and staff to influence change and to get their word out. We're talking specifically about how in decision making. Right now we have a collective bargaining team and we do interest-based bargaining. We asked David to come up with some ideas that we could use that may be different. And do you want to kind of set the
Sure, I can frame it.
scaffolding and then we can
Yeah.
go from there?
There's a continuum of options. On one side is more traditional master agreement or master contract, which is negotiated by a recognized association. Many people call it a union, so your teachers association. So you recognize them, and then on behalf of everybody else, they send their couple people, and you sit down and you make a master contract for them. We had that in the past. The board didn't find that to be representative enough, in their opinion, to get staff input. And so previous boards worked hard at creating a collaborative bargaining team and negotiated policy. So that is an unusual thing in the state of Colorado. It is not a common way to solve it because it's kind of in the middle. On the other side of the continuum is what people refer to as meet and confer, meaning in a simplistic way, the board says, Mr. Superintendent, or one or two board members with Mr. Superintendent, would you go listen to all the people, and from bus drivers to Longfellow to ECC, and however those groups and those focus groups need to be, go listening and see what their passions, their concerns, what their needs are, and get their input. So that's called meet and confer. And in the middle, we kind of sit in the middle there. So that's kind of your framework if you were looking to get staff input, which obviously everybody wants that. And I think I'll let you guys take it from there and I'll answer questions.
Make sure your microphones are on for our discussion. Who wants to start? Okay, I will. I am an advocate for unions. That's the first and most important thing for me to communicate. I have been a union member and I support unions. I observed Aaron do a mild meet and confer with our financial strategy policy. He went to faculty and staff, he went to collective bargaining, he went to the business office, he went to the school board, and he listened to us. He gathered data. He looked for the patterns, and he found how we could frame that. I am interested in perhaps meet and confer, and here's why. I thought that was super valuable and successful, and I want to actually increase the input from what we have beyond the collective bargaining team. Additionally, I want to decrease the time that our big three dream team is in collective bargaining meetings and addressing the other things, the policy that we didn't get to this year, for example, or hiring, or rock music for your videos, Aaron. I want to decrease the time that folks are out of their classroom or their kitchen or their bus or their facility. That's been a big theme for us, and it's why we changed our PTO policy to pay them in money instead of time away, because we want those people in the classrooms. And then finally, I want to increase calm seats. And I think that an idea, David presented that draft policy, and he had committees, and I don't even think we need committees. I think that in the big three buildings, we have meetings where David and a couple of school board members or staff members go and we listen. We only listen. And we gather data just like Aaron did. And then if somebody can't attend that, they can have a coworker be a part of that and say, I'm speaking on behalf of Jen Schiffman. and give that input, and then also do a survey and gather that data, look for the patterns like Aaron did, and find out how we can best serve our amazing faculty and staff. I really like that idea. If it doesn't work, let's come back and try something else. But that's where I am. That's where my interests lie. Thanks for considering. Now, I really need people to comment because I don't know if I'm alone, if I'm out in left field, usually am.
I'm not 100% sure if I'm ready to say which camp I fall into, but I did just want to mention that I know we have heard from the transportation department and the business department, not Aaron, but some of the staff working in that department, that they haven't always felt that CBT fully represented their interests and that they have felt like it was more focused on teachers. So I think that is one of my biggest concerns with the process. And so I don't know exactly, but I know those comments have been made in public meetings. I think they're worth noting and saying out loud again. And I think it's really important that, yes, our teachers are the ones face to face in the classroom with the students, and that should be recognized and honored. And obviously we don't get anywhere without them. But without bus drivers bringing kids to school, and without custodians cleaning our buildings, and without nutrition staff feeding our kids, our district closes. So I feel like it is really important to make sure we have a system where all of those potentially left out voices are being heard. And I know that we do have representation from those groups on CBT, yet I still have gotten a vibe that they don't feel represented.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same space that you're in, Randy. And I have heard from multiple new teachers who are part of the union that they feel as if the union is advocating for policies or changes that seem to support or would apply more to the leadership of the union than to a newer employee or people that the district is trying to hire, that would make it easier for us to hire people that would support new people moving to this town, affect their pay, their level from where they've transferred. And they, yeah, and I don't know how many people this is, but I would like to hear from more people because those are just people I've happened to speak with, right? And they, while they are part of it, they don't feel that the goals necessarily support a broad group of people.
Appreciate that.
And I am a newbie, so I don't have as much experience or knowledge as the rest of you. But the short time that I've been here, well, and just in any organization, I feel very strongly that you hear from everyone, if possible. You get as many voices to be heard, because so many people coming from the education world, teachers and bus drivers, we're busy. They're busy. They're working hard. They don't have time necessarily to share all their opinions or be educated on necessarily maybe what's going on with CBT or the hottest issues because they're out there, but maybe the smaller issues that are bothering them or they're happy with. I would love to hear that. I would love to hear that from everybody and give them an opportunity. I don't want to take more time from them, but I think it would be important to hear everybody's voice, not just again, I know that the CBT is supposed to be representing everyone, but that's impossible. You can't represent everyone. So a meet and greet, or not, what did you call it? A meet and confer, I think gives more opportunity for people to voice their thoughts and wishes and concerns and all of that. So again, I don't have a lot of history, but that's kind of what I'd like to hear from lots more people.
Okay. That data.
Yeah.
I think I would kind of echo that. Now, my impression is just that it seems like there might be, definitely not a formal hierarchy, but somewhat of an undertone of a hierarchy with the CBT. like maybe teachers that have been here a really long time, or classified versus certified. And as say like a teacher that's been here for a really long time, they might have very valuable input, but we cannot value that input more than someone else's that hasn't been here. In my mind, this is one of the rare times where I would use the word like equality of voice. I think everybody should have an equal shake, and it's because this is a business. These people are working for this business and being paid, and we don't have it set up as a hierarchy of a team lead and a manager and an associate manager, blah blah. We don't have it set up like that, so they should not be represented that way. I don't think so. Is a meet and confer the right answer? Well, I don't know, but I think the way it is currently set up is there seems to be a hierarchy. Now, to be fair, that hierarchy might be a default because other people aren't wanting to step up and do that job, and it's a hard job. So I'm definitely not criticizing the people that are stepping up to do that job, but I too would like to hear a more equal voice from everyone.
That's great. Want to make a comment, Matt? I'd like to hear from you if you don't mind.
Yeah, so when I think about this, I try to take the personalities out of it. And right now we have a very good superintendent, we have a very good leadership team all around. Those guys aren't going to be here at some point in the future. Us as a board, we're not going to be here at some point in the future. And to me, we're talking about a governance structure for an institution. You've got to take the individuals out of it. Right now, we have good individuals that are governing the board, and we have good staff people. The current structure with CBT is sort of this, middle road, if you will, between a master agreement and a meet and confer. It's a little bit of a gray zone, but it does provide the staff with rights in those negotiating policies that they will lose in a meet and confer. And those rights will then be subject to the whims of the board without any ability for those employees to say, no, board, what you're doing is wrong. We've had a rough go the last year with CBT, last 2 years, maybe longer, because one, you had COVID. This past year, we loaded on them a mountain of policies, which is very abnormal year in terms of policy review from CBT, which I don't expect is going to happen in the near future. And then we completely revamped sort of the salary structure the prior year, which was a long, difficult negotiation. So we've gotten through a lot of really hard stuff. And to me, you don't make policy decisions based upon the extremes of the bell curve. And what we're looking at and evaluating this change in structure, it's based upon our recent experience, which to me has been at the extreme of the bell curve. So that's my one concern. Not to say there isn't room for improvement. But I do think our recent experience is sort of at the extreme. I also look at districts around the state, and if you look at the top 10% of the districts, which are one of them, most of them don't have meet and confer. Most of them have a master agreement. If you're looking at the top districts, that's because they have teachers that are empowered. So I worry about what a change to meet and confer is going to do to our staff. I think it will create some fear. How much, I think to me is an unknown. Would I like to get more input? Sure, everybody would. Is going to a meet and confer, does it guarantee more input? Not necessarily. So I would put me sort of in the camp of let's look for room to improve, but I'd be very reluctant of throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
I will just say I do appreciate the comment about looking at other districts around the state. I did talk with a retired teacher from one of the districts, which I won't name them, but they, similar to what Matt was saying, flipped their board, fired their superintendent, fired all of their mental health counselors, changed their social studies curriculum, and now have lost 40% of their staff. So I do think your point is valid in recognizing that right now we are stable and do have good leadership, and I would like to think we're a reasonable board. But that took one election cycle to completely destroy that district. So that is something that I think we should keep in mind for sure as we talk through this process.
And I guess I would, to Ben's comment about is the CBT team or whatever, is that from default, not the staff maybe not having the time and energy or interest, capacity to take part of that. So is that just like, yes, we want you to deal with it. So I guess I would ask for comments from staff about, would you want more voice, or are you okay with letting, CBT speak for you? Are they speaking, because I just don't have an idea for how many people they are speaking for. I don't know if it's a small number. I don't know if it's the majority of the staff. I don't know, like you said, you've heard maybe from some of us and some other departments, but I am curious, like, how they're feeling about it, because we don't have the whole picture, and it could create some problems.
Any change will create some concern,
absolutely,
without question.
Yeah,
that's humanity.
I'll just add, I appreciate how you guys have tried to navigate this and gotten to the place where your passion has been, well, how do we get more? We tried ideas this year. CBT worked with those ideas to say, let's get more efficient. That was a value. We were trying to navigate that. And now we're looking at representation. I just deeply appreciate working for a board that's focused on how do we get input into our decision making, regardless of which direction you go. I just appreciate that you guys are, that's when everything settles down and whatever the emotions go, you settle into that North Star of I want input from our people directly. So I appreciate that.
So how, like with Karen's question, how do we get input from the staff as to if the staff feels that CBT is representing them? Because that's not a survey that I would imagine could come from CBT to the staff. Do you think we're representing you? So how do we get staff to give us their honest input on what structure they think is appropriate and how they best feel like their needs are represented?
Sounds like in listening tonight that's what I'm hearing at multiple places, that desire. So I think over July and August, when we come back, I can come up with a strategy that has enough shared leadership and shared checks and balances of who's asking what kind of levels in animosity, maybe try and answer that question. Starting on to that piece, I can try and work on that concept. I think you do have some inputs on that for the TLCC. So you're right, TLCC survey. And also I know CBT did send out a survey that gives some data on that piece. I can bring that back for you as well as one of your data points.
I would add though, Mandy, to your question or comment, I think, remember this past year, we decreased the size of the CBT group for efficiency. And I wonder if there's an opportunity for that group to do a better job of communicating with some of the people that maybe didn't feel as communicated with or have as much input with it. I will say from sitting on our CBT since its inception and sitting on others collaborative bargaining units, the last two meetings we had were phenomenal. I cannot say that for every meeting we've had over the last 2 years. but I think we're getting some traction, and I heard people talk about some parameters for some work limited to this time. There may be a combo solution a little bit to get input. Would be my kind of question to you or wonder, because it wasn't perfect. But if you look at what actually got done this past year, regardless of who did it or did the lion's share of it, a lot got accomplished. And it's never going to be everything we want done in any given year.
Still are waiting for us.
There's never going to be enough of anything. And I think that's one of those things to at least consider. And I think, Matt, to your point, I agree. My concern would be what message does that send to the people that are fairly supportive, that are quiet, that do a great job day in and day out and aren't overly involved in any of it. David talked about the test scores, and the preliminary state results come out Thursday at the state board meeting. We won't get our specifics just yet, but we'll see as a state how things did, and we normally exceed that. So that would just be some commentary or food for thought. The other one would be, I'm not sure I've ever heard what we're evaluated on as a CBT. It's always kind of, and it's not a criticism, but it's always an after the fact kind of conversation we've had of what were the rules to the game when we started and what did we need to get done, and we didn't get those things done. So I will go with the decision that's made and fully support it. I just think there's some questions that I'm not sure we can't do some type of a hybrid and do a better job with the folks that we have that haven't had a voice.
Do you have enough information from your board to prepare for August?
I think I have enough to prepare for August. I do actually appreciate it. I know everyone's being careful with the words. I appreciate that. If you want to follow up with questions, you will. I think this gives me enough clarity also to go to CBT and be really clear with them that the boards, what the boards might be thinking, because there's no vote or anything else. I think that provide that. I appreciate you guys just saying some things that need to be said. So I can reach out to them and try and put a timetable together, so that it's in a process and there's no surprises on anybody on any side, and making sure that we get really clear with everyone so that everyone is focused on how do we give the best way to put staff input. And everyone will have, I'm sure passions to their way, but I think we can make that our North Star and focus in on that piece. So go ahead, Mandy.
I mean, I know we just redid the whole, like who's represented and who's on there and whatever. But kind of in line with what Jen was saying, do we have any criteria for sort of term limits for CBT members, or also like we have to have somebody who's been here 1 to 5 years, somebody who's been here 5 to 20, someone who's been above 20? Like, would that be something worth asking and considering to try to get maybe a more broad view of newer staff, middle of the road staff who's, and then veteran staff?
I think the way we build our matrix for representation doesn't lend itself to that. So that could be another way to keep on trying to get better. And I know we did make changes, but I think that's what I like working with the board is like, okay, let's step it out and then let's keep going. Just because some of the ideas worked and some of the ideas didn't mean we're done. And I know some people get frustrated because they want to be done forever, but that's not how good organizations develop their policy and their work. They keep on saying, take another step. So I appreciate the piece. And I don't think our current matrix allows us to do it. It's more site-based, and it may not be the best way to do it versus we want perspectives. These kind of perspectives is a different way to think about it. So it could change the amount of people there. And then just also name, I think, the capacity issue or the level of interest of people is always a tough part in these conversations. Either there's not interest or not capacity for people because they have high trust in what you guys are doing, that you are interested in trying to take care of them, whether they agree with you or not. There's a lot of trust there. And I think with this people also they're working with the staff, there's trust as well. So just to name that, those things. But Matt and Jen, looks like you had some comments.
Well, I mean, I would love to get more representation, but most people just don't have the time. They just want to do their jobs. I think we have staff that has a good job. I think if we look at our district as a whole, we're in a really good place. So I think we need to be very careful about what exactly we're trying to do and why we're trying to change it when we are in such a good place. We can't even get people to run for the school board, in a community of 6,000 people. So to expect that we're going to find people to step up into these leadership roles in the CBT, yeah, unfortunately, it's going to be a lot of the same people a lot of the time. There's probably things we can do to encourage it, but I think we're always going to have that difficulty. And it's for various reasons people don't want to take on that roles. I get it. You put yourself out there, you get commented on and Facebook and everything else. And yeah, it's not comfortable sometimes being in a leadership role because you're going to say things that people disagree with. And a lot of teachers and staff, they just want to go do their jobs and be with their families at the end of the day and not have to deal with all the other stuff. And I get that.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know what time it does take away from teachers and their classrooms, if any, being on that leadership team. I mean, I assume ultimately it's, up to them who represents the teachers, but I don't know if that is also an issue or not for them. And maybe that limits it because teachers know if they step up, they're going to be shortchanging their students on some level. I don't know. I would love to know. I do not know.
In terms of our way ahead, David,
Yeah.
will we maybe need to take action in August?
I think I need to think about that question. I need to be careful with that question. It has to be a process, but there might be action if we're looking at a change, whether there's a first or second reading. That might be an action item. Like there might be some first readings on some things, as a way to
first
ensure
reading that says and then
ensuring
we
everyone's
vote on that first
notified.
reading.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that might be an example of an action item that I might be recommending to you when we come back and are setting priorities. Is there might need to be some first readings. It doesn't mean changes will happen, but at least
but that's how
puts
you
the community on notice that you guys are formally
That's how you
looking
do
at
that.
some things.
Okay.
And that allows each of you to get your voice in there and then your vote in there in a really public way. So there's nothing happening behind doors or anything like that. So that would be the action items that could be expected in an August meeting. I need to sit and talk to some
some
lawyers.
policy things.
Yeah, I think we need to be careful. I think each of you are being careful. And I know on the other sides of the fence, people are trying to be careful. So
Absolutely.
Okay. Everybody has a shared interest, I think, in getting staff input and valuing that piece. And so I appreciate that about our district. Makes it nice to work for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Does everyone feel comfortable transitioning to the next topic? Okay, let's go. If you'll recall, so 4C is sabbatical leave. We tabled this, or we pulled it out, which is a table, from approving the negotiated policies last month, and so that we can spend some time discussing it this month. David, would you like to take the lead, or do you want our input first?
However it works best for you guys. Is it easier if I frame it? Seems like that tends to help. So your
I like
sabbatical
that.
policy, I think one of the key elements where this board's interested in is sabbatical policy. Of course, my recommendation was to repeal that. And I can go over my reasons, but if you hold it and you guys were interested in a sabbatical policy that did not pay, in other words, you didn't get a salary while you're off doing your educational leave. And so that's what we're looking at. We saw some, the lawyers submit some to us just to look at. That was part of the board packet. I'm not sure if you got to see that. I know like Aspen has one. It was interesting to see that theirs is on hold indefinitely, as I think boards are struggling with the change in that space. So there's the process question of if you guys have a strong opinion on how you want to do your board, this is part of the earlier conversation. It's a struggle. You guys have an elected duty that you don't get to delegate whether you want to or not, to have quality policies. Right? That is your part of your election when you swore in. It's one of your key duties. And now you're in a situation where you don't like what was ratified and submitted by the staff. It's not really acceptable from your guys' perspective, but from process wise, your hands are kind of tied. So you're stuck in this weird zone. And I think that does inform the earlier conversation that people sometimes gloss over. It's not about egos, it's about executing elected duties sometimes. So unless you take an action in August on how you get staff input, negotiated policies, and that sort of thing, then you can give me dictation and some sort of direction. I can take that back under the sabbatical leave, and I can go rework it in the current process, the negotiated policy. That's really the only path forward in that sense. And I think one of the key things for you guys is you wanted clear criteria that HR would make a decision, not a committee of people, and it would be the same answer no matter what, and it would not be paid. So it's really job protection type policy for educational leave that has clear boundaries and definitions. I believe that's what you guys are looking for in that policy if I was to take it back to the bargaining team.
And to clarify, only for teachers and special service providers.
As currently where it sits, I've not heard anyone seek to move that beyond the certified exempt employee. That would just be exempt certified employees would have that benefit. Sabbatical benefit. Mm-hmm. So I guess maybe a place to start is, do you want to talk process? Because that's which kind of informs the previous conversation. Or do you want to talk, hey, this is what I want to see in this policy, and am I listening well, or is there some things I need to listen better to?
I have some questions about policy, and not sabbatical, but long-term leave. Like when I read the ratified long-term leave, that's maybe even further away from a leave that I would enjoy than the original leave that I already don't support.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is, I guess, a little frustrating to feel like, okay, now I've given you what I think would be a good policy, and another month has gone by, and then you'll tell someone else, this is what Jen thinks, and then they'll say what they think, and it feels like it could just go on forever, and I don't enjoy that. But I also love the way all the other policies came through. I appreciate everyone's work on that. It was awesome, but when you get to a couple sticky ones,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not sure how that looks.
Okay.
And we have some really sticky ones that we didn't get to. The blues is 60. Yeah. So, got that to look forward to.
And those are negotiated.
Those are negotiated.
Negotiated policies.
Kind of on our list for next, what would be a fall 4 meeting conversation.
Is CBT changing their meetings to the fall now?
Did I say it poorly? Spring. I should have said spring. Second semester.
So nothing will change.
So CBT is not having any meetings until the spring.
That is not currently how it's set up, which is another informs the previous conversation of if you limit how much you can come to, it can cause that time warp, that time delay, that time issue that Director Shookman was discussing and her concern. Yes, if we don't do something unique, then the basic train would say it wouldn't be dealt with until really next May. So it could be a whole another 12 months,
And
which doesn't, probably not acceptable.
they have
And
4 meetings a year?
4 meetings a year is per policy. And I know that I've heard you guys express pretty clearly, you would like that to be, when you said 4, you meant 4, not
Absolutely.
4-ish.
And we doubled them last year because they had fall and then they changed and requested spring and we gave them that.
So they had 8 left,
You had
We
8.
had fall negotiations and spring negotiations.
which is probably why we got through so much of the policy.
That is part of it. And we definitely did more than 8 meetings.
Oh,
That wouldn't be fair to say we kept it to 8.
yeah. I mean, I think that is a problematic situation, especially if Jody is mentioning that we're going to have more sticky policies coming up in this last chunk of review. I do feel like if we have policies that we think are problematic, we can't be in a position. I mean, now that would be 2 years. We've already gone a year.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I think we kind of got some consensus earlier that nobody's ready to just say we're done with CBT and let's get some more input and keep reviewing and looking at it. But to me, this would be high on the list of problematic concerns, is that when we have a policy that's not working, we cannot take 2 years to change it. So I don't know if there's, I mean, if you do a workaround, right, then you're just destroying the whole reason for having CBT in the first place, because we're saying, well, we have CBT, but when we don't like it, we'll just go above you. So that doesn't work, and I don't support that. But we have to have a better system.
Yeah, because I mean, for me, and I'm only one vote and one voice, this is a very wide gulf between the ratified policy and what I think is appropriate for the district personally. Just my voice, just my vote, but it's not anywhere close. And so even a conversation in a year seems fruitless.
I'm trying to find the ratified policy. Is that the one we currently have?
It's the one that CBT's pushed forward, it's put through the staff in
We
May.
still have the one we have.
Okay, so it's the
No,
one that
right,
was
the
pushed forward.
sabbatical.
Okay, that's the
Yeah.
one we're talking about. Okay.
Right. So we have the one that's on the books. That no one, we're all publicly have said, we're not supporting these because it's not a clear enough policy. And you've got now one that's the staff have said, would you please consider
Yeah,
doing this?
I don't want to get too deep
But
into
have
it because
we-
I feel like I
have any of
have
us ever
every
seen
month, but it's moving in the wrong direction for me. Like a leave team is a big no. I would rather have it come to the board than have it go to your peer in the class next room getting your medical information. Just very, very, very uncomfortable with that. So it seems like we're moving further apart. Maybe.
Well, on these hard policies, we saw what happened when a policy did not get fixed in a timely manner. And to put off these policies further, I just see more and more issues like that happening. It needs to be.
And I don't feel like I'm getting clarification on how the policy really works from the perspective of the requester. Because from what I can tell, it does not have anything to do with the family. It only, maybe protects benefits if the district is okay with someone who is not working and might not ever work for the district again, staying on healthcare. And I would like to know the total implications of that. Are there none? Are there some? So, just a lot of questions. And again, never putting a principal in a position where they don't decide which teacher is in every single classroom.
Jen, you highlighted my concern. I will likely not support either of these in any form because I want to protect the principals.
So could you just remind me on when we were having CBT meetings?
Yes.
And we had a point that we couldn't get past, we went to an impasse.
Correct.
And that was always this threat thing.
Yes.
Or it's something that we didn't want to approach.
Yeah. It's perceived as a very negative process.
Correct. So since this is not a CBT meeting, is this a point where you would reach an impasse, or is an impasse only in a CBT meeting?
I think we're in a unknown zone, which we've never faced before. I think either party, either the board or the bargaining team, could say, no, we're at an impasse. I think somebody could declare that, and we would start down that process of fact finding and do that piece. I think everyone is trying to say, how do we keep on collaborating and working on this so no one's made that declaration? It's okay, well, we've got 99% good here. Let's pull out the 1% and keep moving forward. You could call that impasse. Somebody could make that claim, and I think you'd have to go through that process. Neither team has kind of been comfortable thus far to say, we'll just pause and we'll see how the conversation develops. So we're living in a gray zone. As you add time, that becomes more, you're heading towards impasse. So if we, on either side, any person, the delay becomes almost a permanent delay, then you have to declare impasse and go through that process to resolve that piece.
So some groups, some boards may have already declared that 3 months ago, or further.
Yep. Yeah, that could have been something we could have, either side could look at that piece. And there's a process laid out that's in our policy that we would have to follow that policy, whether we don't like it or not. You wouldn't want to change the policy right when you hit the part you don't like.
Very good.
I mean, is there a chance that we could just use like something like Aspen. It seems like their policy says in agreement with the administration and the union, they agreed to suspend the policy and to put further notice. I mean, I think we've made it pretty clear as a board that we're not going to grant long-term leave requests or sabbatical requests under these current policies.
I think we could. I think we would probably use an MOU type legal agreement to put them in some sort of a hiatus status, a passive or inactive status. I don't know what legal term would be the correct one. We could use an MOU with them and offer that to them. I could have that over the summer developed and bring that back in August as a way to kind of say, hey, they're off the table and we're glad to continue to collaborate, but we're not going to collaborate with them active. I think that's a very reasonable approach, and I could push that forward for this one and the next one, long-term leave. It's hard to separate these two. They've got so many similarities.
I mean, they do have similarities. I guess with the sabbatical, I mean, I was kind of the one that in the camp of if it's very important to staff, I'm not sure I'm going to die on repealing it. I also support your thought to repeal it. I mean, I do think like we have the CMC offerings where they can get graduate degrees paid for. And you recommended to staff that we increase payment for continuing ed, and they said no. So I don't know. I mean, that changes all the stuff we just did too. So I don't know if it's worth, but I do think it's important to at least throw that out there for the community that while we're thinking we don't necessarily want to pay for a teacher to go get their master's, we are paying for teachers to get their master's. We're just asking them to work while they're doing it. So we do have some pretty good educational offerings on the table already. I didn't get my master's paid for. So I think that is important for the community and all of the staff to know that, yes, there are opportunities for education while you're working.
And I think I definitely would mention, like, if we're going to talk about details of sabbatical, I think the world has shifted. You know, when sabbatical policies came to exist, one, it's a higher education thing that has been kind of pushed to a K-12. And you had to go to that university in that city. There wasn't a distance option. Most of your graduate programs are in distance fashion, hybrid fashion. Almost all of them are scheduled in that way for people to work and do that. So the world has shifted a lot since kind of that original conception of sabbatical, we'll say in the 50s, 60s, that we're living with that iteration today, that understanding. I think it's worth noting. And would love to support. I think we'd be interested in supporting more people. So that's kind of from my perspective.
I mean, I don't have a super strong perspective here, but I will say that I did have multiple community members reach out to me this year saying that a sabbatical affected their child in a very negative way by having the specific teacher out of the classroom. They felt that their child didn't, and I'm not saying anything bad about whoever was in the classroom. I don't even know who it was, but they felt that that continuity, that loss of continuity for their student had a negative impact.
That's interesting. David, so I want to play out a scenario.
Okay.
You can apply for and get your graduate degree funding.
Yep.
Take a sabbatical while you're doing it, and there's no service obligation within that framework.
Through the concurrent enrollment expansion grant?
Through both, through our sabbatical and through our concurrent enrollment expansion grant.
Our current sabbatical does have a 3-year service agreement post sabbatical.
Right.
So I would just make sure I'm clear on that. And when we are paying through this grant that we currently have access to, there is a service agreement.
But you said, you didn't say there's a service obligation.
There's a service obligation. I apologize if I said before, but the difference is it's not in reimbursement form. And so there's a different mechanism that makes it less simple to hold somebody accountable to that service agreement.
Right. Okay. It's that side to get your master's degree. It's hard to enforce, and on the sabbatical side, it's hard to enforce, and we haven't had people follow through with that historically. So that's an area of concern for me.
Yeah, and I would agree.
That's
other people who it has been new to access the sabbatical, and
So
We've
far,
tried to do
latest,
MOUs. We've tried different ways to make sure we get that service agreement or get it paid back, because that hasn't been a really successful.
it's
strategy.
hard, right, right. It sounds good. Enforcement is minimal, and we don't have a very good track record. The current sabbatical filler runner is honoring their commitment so far. So what's our way ahead, David?
Would the board have an interest in me bringing back in August something that I think Matt articulated? I think it was the director ops, to say, I bring back an MOU, I let us see it in August, you guys would vote on that, allow me to extend that to the bargaining team to take these two policies that are the current sticky point, and put them into an inactive status. And I work with lawyers to determine what is that acceptable way until collaboration, we can find a path forward. So if it takes us 1 more year or 5 more years, it's an inactive status, so the problem doesn't get worse while we're trying to figure out a good way forward.
I really like that. Thanks for that idea. And I also like that due to the expectations. I mean, I feel like this board has made clear what the policy will be on these, but obviously, teachers are maybe not clear on how that
important.
request will go. And so this could also manage current expectations and maybe avoid people thinking they have a benefit that is probably not there right now.
So clarify, if that is the case, then it stays as is.
The current policy would kind of, there would be no policy. So
There's
like
no-
sabbatical would come off the table
Mhm.
until everyone could collaborate and agree on the right way to do it.
Okay.
In the meantime, you would make inactive the current policy, and you wouldn't adopt the one that was just ratified. You would just say, no sabbaticals are being offered in a very formal, legal way, to manage expectations, because we ran into that.
I would like to be clear that I'm also talking about long-term leave.
And long-term leave.
Yes.
For sure, not just talking about sabbatical.
Yes.
Okay,
So-
thanks. Okay.
We could probably, in the board packet, Aspen says,
Yeah.
currently on hold in red, large, big font.
Right. Okay. I
Andy?
understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that seems like a pretty good suggestion. Because I definitely don't want a whole year of sitting around with these policies that we've made it clear we don't support. But I also appreciate that we're not going to go to impasse and go ahead above CBT and say we're doing what we want. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So it does seem like that's maybe a good solution. And then honestly, I would imagine that puts a little bit more motivation maybe for CBT to take these two policies up right away in their first couple of meetings and maybe be a little more thoughtful on the board's feedback of what we're saying we'll support and won't support.
Okay. Makes sense. I
To
think,
be-
okay.
Just one more important question to be clear, they can trigger impasse with this. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So the
Yeah.
CBT has the authority to trigger impacts if they don't want to put these on hold and work through them.
And I think same thing. Then I think maybe there's a process now I can imagine and work on the details where we're trying to make an MOU. So there's a solution, because if you go through any kind of impasse or mediation services, the goal is kind of that MOU.
So if we can give the MOU.
So we're
then
kind
we
of
can-
saying, here's a solution without having to go through the process, which I think honors everybody. I will try that. And then if we can't find success there, then we'll probably need to, one, start an impasse process. I would recommend going down that, if we can't find a solution, then we're going to need to go through that. And then I think the board also needs to consider what your duty is and whether you have enough power to do your duty, or whether you delegated too much away into CBT that you need to redraw the boundaries around that process so that you have enough power to execute your duty as we're struggling with these two policies. I think it's important for the community to hear this is, in some ways, there's two issues on the table, right? What's a good policy for somebody taking an extended leave? That's one set. And also, what's the process by which the board
Right,
gets input, but the board is not,
Okay.
yes, completely disempowered to do their duty of having good policies. I think both things are being worked here simultaneously, and I wouldn't want the community to
get
get
mushed together.
lost
Yeah.
as they mix and match those conversations.
And as far as communicating to the community, I think it's important to note that it has been made so that if you leave employment with the district for any reason, when you come back, you're where you left off.
You are where you left off. We ratified that policy and approved that
I
in
think that's
May.
important to have that
And
out
secondly, we also know that
Extraordinary.
with what many people call tenure or non-probationary status, that is portability. So if you left for 5 years and came back, you could maintain that status. So it's really not about many of the major concerns or interests that people have. So, yep. I have a path
Okay.
forward. That's enough information.
Okay.
Glad to continue to dive into it, but I feel like I can do something over the summer that sets everyone up to success for next year if you guys are willing to move forward on that.
Okay. Before we go to action items, do we need a break? Okay. All right, 7 minutes?
That gets us
Okay, right.
7:40.
Please turn off your
Everyone
mics.
check your mics, please. Bill's talking. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna just make a decision, and we're gonna do 5. We're gonna move 5D. So if you guys can turn your page, approval of final contract with DSI for final phase of the remodel of Coconuts.
I really like
I'm sorry, for the Oak Street facility. Is everybody comfortable with that movement? Just for Jane. Yeah, okay. So may I have a motion to approve that final contract?
I'll move to approve the final.
Thank you, Mandy. Second. Thank you, Jen. And now we're at discussion.
I just want to say thanks. I'll start off and get us going. We have Jake here. Jake is our project manager from DSI. We got a chance to sit down yesterday as a team with them as well as DLR and start to really line it out. And I was just had incredible confidence going through that of how it's going to be managed very tightly, very transparently. We already have minutes from that meeting of who's doing what. It's getting lined out very, very well from a project management standpoint. So that encouraged me greatly. The main thing we were working on yesterday was getting down to every last kind of dot and tittle and making sure every number was correct. Sheila's great at that, and so she went through it line by line and helped us find every little thing that could be improved. I feel strongly that the contract you got in front of you is the right number. I think you will be able to get the project done within our expectations, and so that would be kind of as a starting point to the discussion. I want to get you there. It's kind of coming in a little last minute. I think that's kind of how these things are, but this project's kind of had ragged edges since we started in the middle of a pandemic, and I feel like it is in order and ready to move. So I'm excited about that. So questions or comments that I can help you with on this? It came in as a late addition, so I know it's new for you. Not as I had them on Monday. No, they have not. You can approve it pending legal review. That'd be a pretty common expectation.
Here we go. Here it is. The one thing I wanted to just make sure my peers know where I stand is that I'm not quite comfortable with that full kitchen going in. It's budgeted for that full kitchen, but I wanted it to be plumbed and wired for such. And then maybe if there was a culinary program through CMC, then we advance it that way. That's something that I'm looking forward to. I'm interested in making sure that it's paused, but I don't know where anybody else stands. And it's not an enormous concern for me, but it has ramifications, secondary and tertiary ramifications that cost more money that I'm concerned about.
And I will echo that same thing. I think just from a programmatic standpoint, I think our alternative schools will benefit from having the money to move forward, but they need some time to move into the space and learn how to use that programmatically. They have options that a traditional school doesn't have, and I don't want them to reproduce a traditional solution without having a pause, move in and figure out what other options they have so they can do even more than just serve lunch, so to speak. So I would echo that same concern. And while the money's there in the budget.
So is your concern more sort of the ongoing expense of running the additional kitchen or actually building for both?
Yes, the human, the HR side of those things, I don't believe alternative schools should have that. And then just maintaining it and the cost of the hood, the big washer, dishwasher, and all those things. But I do see kind of a nice, exciting, hopeful thing that there could be a little culinary certificate down the line, and you would go to Horizons for that. That's a long future. What's that, Karen?
I agree. I think that a space where they can wash dishes or possibly warm a lunch or do something is fine for now. It is set up that way currently, so jump down and put in a full kitchen.
And then it's staffed that way.
And staff it.
On that note, one of the things that's interesting, we're trying out of this fiscal year, we have extra grant dollars to expend on one of our grants, and we're trying to buy the hood out of that, not in this contract. So they are working to get that done because it has to be in place by June 30th. So they're trying to get that order in as a team. I don't know, Jake, if you guys got any movement over the last 24 hours on that one, or. Okay, so that's moving forward. So that hood, which is part of stubbing in that kitchen, making sure it's in place, I think will be there, but it's not in this budget because we have funds to pay for it elsewhere. So we keep that COP a little lower that way.
Jake, if you were advising a layman's board on this contract, where are the most important things for us to understand?
I think the exhibit A, which is community and investment access, gives us a bunch of. So the last like 4 pages or 5 pages, look at it over you guys. So I can find what the actual scope is. So you guys have seen drawings. I know drawings can be very overwhelming. With 90 pages of drawings, you're like, what is going on? And 500
Right.
pages of spec sheets, you're like, I don't understand any of this. But those 5 pages on the back are really defining what our scope is going to look like. So I think if I was going to look at the contract, I would look at those last 5 pages and really say, is this what we want DSI to build? Is this like everything we want to build in here?
I think the key thing is because these are not theoretical subcontractor bids. These are solid bids that they'll be held to. So some things have changed. For instance, glass has gone up 50,000.
Yep.
But electrical went down by almost 50,000.
Yeah, so we were able to kind of balance those two.
You know, and so overall, when those ins and outs, it came up to about $9,000 of where we expected it. So which is very reasonable. I was actually very, very pleased. That our initial bids are falling so tightly into overall where our final number is. So,
and we have the other numbers coming out too. So I still kind of send out to some other people to kind of see if we can get some more numbers coming in to kind of drop that price even more. So that's kind of where we're headed right now.
And then the only other question I have is, and I might be out ahead of my skis here, is that do you think that, I mean, if it really is done in January,
this contract would put us at March, spring break. Think that way. The end of March is what their
Okay.
commitment
End of March
is.
is what we're shooting for with a July 15 start.
is that pretty realistic?
That's kind of what we're shooting for with an 8-month kind of building time frame. The kind of 3 things that have to happen before we really want to start construction is get a permit, of course. That's a huge step. Paying tap fees to the city, which is a huge step, and then getting this contract signed from you guys. So once those 3 things are in line, DSI has a 10-day workday turnaround to get this project moving forward. And then that's when we'll kind of set that 8 months moving forward from time.
So you're waiting on us?
Kind of, and the county to get their permit complete and the tap fee.
Oh, we are a county land, so it goes through the county.
County.
But it has to go through. The other thing
Yeah.
you need to know, it's 8 months. I think that'll be the easy deadline. The one no one can make any promise will be is state fire. Their reviews, their inspections, and their sign-offs. That is an unknown that could add months. But that's why we're trying to ensure that our team's ready to roll, and so we can make a nice, smooth, easy transition. Plan it out, I think, pretty well if we have it done by the end of March. And then if we've got time, then it's not one of those things with the other projects like a Longfellow. It's like, well, we're moving in the day before COP. I mean, we've had some really tight windows. This gives us a nice way for us operationally to think about it, absorb the surprise, and then let service take her teams and her families and everything else that she needs to do to make it a really successful program switch. So,
And I guess that's a question for Jake. David. So you're the project manager as far as building
Yes,
this. Who are you working with on the district side to make sure it all?
David direct.
Okay.
I'm
So
going to be
you're
point. It's one
juggling-
of those things we're going to have to try and figure out. But I want to get this project settled in. It's had too many ragged edges for too long.
Mhm.
So you'll have, I mean, Aaron obviously on the finance side, doing that piece. Sean Clark will be the one that's kind of daily going around looking at electrical sockets. That's not what my work is. And then Will and I trying to make sure the teams are talking. There's no things, but DLR is also kind of on our behalf joining those meetings. They're not in every single one, but when they're there as architects, it's our interests are the ones that they are.
But I guess I'm thinking about programs being disrupted in classrooms and.
So that's why we
cleanliness, you know,
will be meeting
who's-
regularly, and it's on Jake's
Okay.
job to ensure that if he's going to be blowing out a wall, so to speak, that's not happening in the middle of press day. you know.
And so it's really awesome to talk to Sean, because Sean's been very open with me about where we're at in the process. So I can go to Sean and say, this is what I need to do. This is where I'm going to be working. Is that acceptable during this time frame, or can we move that class temporarily until we work on this wall, something along those lines? And we do have a bi-weekly OAC meeting, which is owners, architects, and contractors. So the 3 groups are going to sit down together and kind of coordinate everything beyond that point every other week. If we need to make those more frequent as we get close to the end of the game, we can definitely do that. But that'll be the main coordination meeting where I say, David, this is my 8-month schedule. In the next 5 weeks, this is what I'm going to be doing. Is this going to disrupt anything in you guys' life?
And you will be very flexible and fluid because of all the things that would and could happen in a classroom, right?
I think the site, for the most part, is going to be pretty easy to keep separate. When they're working on that bathroom section between the 2 buildings, that one is going to be slightly disruptive, so we'll see how far they get. And then, but I think on Fridays and stuff, they'll be able to say, we need to cut off the electricity to make a connection, and they'll have Fridays in order to make that happen. I think it'll actually have more of an impact on our business team and some of their shared spaces. I think it may impact them. We might have to have some people working mobile during certain weeks of the project just because it's too much noise or too much disruption. I think that'll be more likely than an alternative. It'll be interesting with the middle school. Or the middle school makes more noise, or the construction workers.
Yeah,
I
right.
think we should maybe
Maybe
run some bets or something on which one's going to be more disruptive.
David, I think I have my ducks out of order.
Okay.
So when do we annex into the city?
Okay. Now it's a third process. Jake, do you want to start in on that and understand how those parallel
Which
things
one
are
happened?
going?
Yeah. Okay. So is it all happening at once?
It's all happening at once. And so usually we have the annexation first, but we've been blessed to have the opportunity to do both of them at the same time. And so the annexation process is moving forward. JD has been amazing with helping kind of getting those drawings set up. And then Sheila's a part of that process as well. So between JD, Sheila, and then any kind of additional stuff from DSI, we have the annexation process happening with the city. We have the city tap fees, which theoretically would not have to happen if the annexation didn't happen. So it's kind of like getting the cart before the horse a little bit. Like we're preparing for annexation to happen, even though it's not happened yet. And then the county's review happening at the same time. So all 3 of things are going to be operating at the same time. It's like a 3-month complete process for an annexation to actually occur. So we're going to be halfway through the project. The biggest goal of the annexation deadline, what the city told me, is the CO date. So before the end of March, we have to have the annexation complete. So that'd be 2 parallel processes.
We're going to be annexed.
Mhm.
Okay.
No, that's what a pre-annexation
kind of important to
agreement is
ask,
there.
you know.
I mean, there are places where we could get some surprises. We had one last week where they wanted a drawing that we didn't expect. So team flexed and is getting that drawing together that they wanted. But I don't see any reason why that's not going to continue to move forward. I'm very positive on that space. There's benefit to everybody continue to move
Everybody's
forward.
working at the same time.
Key thing is annexation and tapping into water and construction. I would keep tapping into their water line can't happen until annexation is done. And water is what we're doing the annexation for. So we can put the water line in, but we can't tap it in until annexation is done. We can do all of our construction, but we can't tap into their water until we do that.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Jake or David on this? Ben, you feel comfortable with the bathroom arrangement that we approved? Okay. Any other brush fires you want to bring us in, or how we should look at this as a board?
No.
Okay.
And I know Jake's willing to be here if we need him at board meetings in that sense to go through that. I think one of the things when we come back in August is we do need to think about it's not uncommon for a board to assign 2 board members or something for a project of this magnitude to just make sure there's that board oversight, kind of direct ability to look at stuff. And so then in August, we might want to talk about that piece. And maybe it's a monthly meeting and Jake's at those as a DSI representative, just to mention that might be something as a structure. I think we've got everything we need, and you guys have duties to make sure those things are happening the way you expect them. So that might be something in August. You think of another subcommittee, or you could assign to Joe and Karen and say, we're the facilities committee, whether you guys perceive that as 2 different things to share the load, or whether you perceive that as the same thing. I know Karen will have an interest in how our alternative schools get built with her experience. I know Joe's got a passion for that, so that might be an easy solution. But just want to name that.
So start thinking if you're willing to do that. That's more homework.
Okay.
Bullseye, right? Other homework.
I should take notes.
I know. Okay. Okay.
Ready for a vote?
Thank you. I believe everybody looks comfortable. Yes.
We're ready. All right. Dr. Breckenridge Pettit.
Aye.
Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs. Mrs. Lumberg.
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
And Ms. Schiffman.
That's a good deal. Thank you very much. Okay, Jake, you can get back to that cute little girl.
Are we doing the full kitchen, or is that something we're going to readdress? In a different meeting?
We will readjust that so you can make that as an alternate or in a contingency.
Sounds good.
We'll work on that hood.
If we are going to buy the hood January 30th, is that something we want to
The hood is a go forward
go
on.
no matter what hood?
It's at
Okay.
a different fund, not out of the contract.
Clarifying before I let this grow.
Hang on, you said January though. June
Yeah.
30th.
Yeah.
I know we're all like,
But
What?
he meant,
Yeah, that's okay.
okay.
Are you
Yeah, we're just making it, yeah, ducks in a
First time
row.
I've spoken 2 hours.
Jake, feel free to call me tomorrow if you feel, and we can get signatures to you tomorrow in that sense as well, okay?
Okay, sounds great. Thank you
All right.
guys.
Thank you for
Thank
making
you
the time for
so
us.
much. So much. Okay, so now let's return to our regularly scheduled. We just did 4 discussion items. Now we're on action items. So 5A is approve the first readings of the CASB emergency approval. May I have a motion? Thank you, Mandy. Second? Thanks, Jen. Discussion. This is how David explained these to me, is this is how President of the United States influences us in Salida. These are changes at the national level, and they're coming through the state Board of Education, Department of Education, and it's to us. We have no authority. Any other areas of concerns or any confusion?
I will just let you know, our legal team, Melissa Barber, she did let me know that Kaplan and Ernst is working on maybe a different solution to be
Modified
more of
one.
a handbook solution. They're trying to work some ideas because it seems like now the H presidency is going to redefine Title IX each time they take over the White Office, which is an interesting development. So if that's going to be every 4 years, I think the legal teams are trying to say, how do we not rewrite? These are very base policies. How do we not have to make emergency readings as the White House changes hands? How do we do that piece? So it could be all these in place. We come back in August and I say our legal team suggesting a new option and we move towards that option. Just so you're aware of how that goes. Your Title IX officer is Will. And so he leads that. If there's a concern, I think he does a very good job. I want you guys to know that if there's a concern, he has to evaluate whether we need to look into it deeper. If there's something concerning, we do ask our lawyers more often than not to look into it.
We err on this.
Just for a non-partial investigation, making sure we're on that space. So we do spend extra money in those situations. But I think as a small town, rural, as we're all wearing lots of hats, I think that's a much safer place to be and ensure that if there's a student or a staff member who's not feeling comfortable, that it's thoroughly looked into. So I appreciate the style, and I don't see this change as making any change to that piece. And it allows our lawyers to be investigators, Will to be the Title IX, and then it leaves me to do an appeal process to try and address when our system isn't working as well as we want it to. So it'll be the same organizational solution, but this gets us in compliance on these laws.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about them? Will, do you want to add any insight as our Title IX representative?
No, I think David did a good job of summarizing how things have worked. And if they're, I don't like to use the word significant because it depends on how you look at a situation, but every situation is unique, and our legal counsel has been really good at giving us support when needed. So I have no real concern with that.
And when there has been an inquiry, we've done really well with violations of the law, which is really
So
good.
far, so good.
We're batting really nicely. Okay.
All right. Dr. Breckenridge Pettit.
Aye.
Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs.
Aye.
Mrs. Lumberg.
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal. Aye. And Ms. Schiffman.
Aye.
And
Okay.
can I just make
Yeah.
sure, board, as you're aware, it's not like it never happens. I would say we do 2 to 3 full-blown Title IX sexual concerns of someone not feeling comfortable a couple times a year.
Yeah.
right? So it's obviously a large HR lift when those hit. But I just want you to know those things do occur. It's not, we have this many human beings. It's not a surprise, and we look into it. But I just don't want you to think it's like something that never happens. It does occur, and we utilize those structures to do it.
Excellent. All right, at this point, we're going to move to approving second readings. May I have a motion? Thank you, Mandy. Second. Thank you, Jen. Discussion? Well, we're approving block G, the whole G policies.
Oh, so G, okay, so 2 and 3 are the same. That'd be right. But it says
So-
approve second readings on one block. Correct.
This is the second reading of
Of
those
that block of G
of the
policies, yeah.
that
Sorry,
block
that's
of
the
right.
departments. Yeah.
It seems like we just worked on those a long time ago, but we're only doing the second reading for Robert's rules, and we have another one in August. Okay, we kind of arm wrestled these already, so I'm okay.
My main question is, since you guys went through all of those, the ones that were set for repeal, I didn't look at closely or really at all. Why, can you just give a brief why we're repealing them? Is it because they're represented in other policies, or?
The log change, almost all of those were our lawyers' recommendation to repeal those because they didn't feel like they were, it's not how the policy book, they just kind of never got dealt with. And so they just kind of hung on in our policy book.
Okay.
None of them are negotiated. We waited to do these to get through this negotiated because we didn't want these to disrupt that conversation. Matt and Jody were the ones who helped me review those, but I have no concerns whatsoever.
Okay. And then my only other comment is with that staff victim leave, and you said you were holding that one for better language, but now that we just have a PTO policy, it shouldn't say sick leave, right? It should say
PTO, that's a very good one. So in the third reading, let's make sure we get that caught. But I did get feedback from the lawyer. She's quite comfortable with how it reads. I know Director Hobbs had brought that up. They like, well, if you're going to say according to law, do you need to list this? And her response was, well, what's at the bottom of the page covers that, kind of the small print covers that piece sufficiently from their perspective. So I can only say that's good.
And I also thought the option 2 seemed better than the option 1 for.
Yeah, I apologize for not getting that out of there. We'll
Yes.
definitely be looking at option 2 on that issue. That is the portability GCFA. Portability one would be, it's that staff member's job to bring it in if they believe they have a contract or a property right. They need to bring that up front, and that's on them
At the beginning.
at the
And
beginning.
that'll help our business office.
Yep.
We ready? All right, Dr. Breckenridge Pettit,
Aye.
Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs, Mrs. Lundberg,
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
And Ms. Strickland.
Aye.
Okay, carrying on to action items. May I call for a motion to approve the amendment for the 23-24 budget?
So moved.
Thank you, Jen. Second? Second. Thanks, Ben. Discussion. You want, Aaron, can you explain
Yeah.
this? Yes.
Yeah, I can jump in. This kind of, me and Kim are working on this again with no internet today. So B and F kind of go together. But this is just an audit recommendation, basically because it's our first year with the interest-free loan. We were learning how to book both the revenue from it and the expenditure of it, and they want us to actually book it as an expenditure each year. That wasn't in the amended budget when we did it, so suddenly it looks like we have 1.5 million more in expenditures than we actually did because it's an in and out. But basically called, our auditor had mentioned something about if your expenditures go above what you actually say you're expended, it'll be ding on the audit. So I called her up and said, what do we do about this at this point? Then we're already past amended budget. So she said, you can just make another amended budget with this added in there as long as it's in the board packet and the board minutes and it's approved. It won't be a ding on the audit. That's the best way to do it. So it's her recommendation to make sure that we get through the audit cleanly. And it's the exact amount of how much we took out in our loan.
Penny.
Yep. One thing I guess I should add to that, though, is we're going to have to put this in for the future. She recommended you can either put it in the initial budget or the amended budget every year. I think I told her I'm more comfortable with it in the amended budget so that it doesn't look like we're inflating our revenues or our expenditures. And that way, by middle of the year, we'll know about how much it's actually going to be, and so we'll have a really good idea of what that looks like.
And
So,
how would you put that in an initial budget anyway?
I mean,
you
you
don't
could
really know.
you could just guess.
So many
You'd say
things
3
are-
million in, 3 million out, or something like that. But that to me, when you're talking about things like negotiations and things, it suddenly looks like, oh, but you have a $25 million budget instead of a 22, and I don't like that. I'd like it to be a little bit more clear. So I think it'd probably
Right,
go in the
fair.
amended budget. But you would see this now in the amended budget going forward.
Okay, so this would be a regular update.
Yeah.
A regular. Okay.
Yeah.
I like Aaron's approach. Does anybody have any concerns with that approach? Matt, you'd be comfortable with Aaron having an amended budget this time next year with the exact number? Going once?
Right. Let me try that again. Dr. Breckenridge Pettit.
Aye.
Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs.
Aye.
Mrs. Lundberg.
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
And Ms. Schickman.
Aye.
Kim, would it make sense to go to F just since that's the
Yes.
resolution for
Yes.
so you've approved the budget now, the amended
And now we have
budget,
to make the
and now you have to approve the resolution that
I'm
that
very
has the
comfortable.
appropriations. So might as well do them both at the same time.
F, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Matt. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Karen. Discussion? Same topic, any areas of concerns? I don't want to rush it. Well,
Come on,
but
Karen.
I'm
Yeah.
going to just waffle. I'm going to do some entertainment
Okay,
until you can
yes,
get.
all right, I'm ready. Dr. Breckenridge Pettit.
Aye.
Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs.
Aye.
Mrs. Lundberg.
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
And Ms. Schickman.
Okay, so let's go back up to C. That's the COP, Certificate of Participation, or what's the other potential?
Certificate of placement.
Placement. That is that loan that we have for Horizons before we sell off the other assets.
No, it's
May I call a motion to approve the COP?
So moved.
Thanks, Matt.
Second.
Second, Jen, and discussion. Matt and Jen.
Thank you.
Okay. You want to lead?
the discussion on the
Oh, sorry. No, I just,
We
okay.
were talking about no.
No.
No is the answer.
I'll just kind of guide.
Okay,
So
Aaron,
Aaron,
do
I
you
believe
wanna-
from Cycle, you guys have a direct recommendation. Do you just want to say what that is?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a few things that you're doing on approving the certificate of participation. First of all, you're going to be approving the resolution that I gave to you today. We just got these in. The problem, I know it's new and it's late to the board. This is the resolution that allows you to actually go into the COP. So that is this document here. Yep, thank you. It is a series of larger documents that give basically David the authority to go into all the contracts with that and closing documents and so on and so forth. So actually, Jody, if you approve that, you'll be signing this
All
book
of those.
tonight. And most of it is incomplete and drafts and things like that that we'll be continuing to work with Stifle on finalizing. But since you don't have a board meeting in July, they recommended we do that
Moving
all
forward.
tonight. So that's the resolution is the main thing you're approving, which allows us to go take care of all the rest of the documents basically over the next month. We're hoping to have it closed on July 1st so we can actually get the money. And then you have two pieces of paper in front of you. I just wanted this for transparency. These were your bids that came back for the actual COP. And so Stifle recommended we consider the top two, which is Webster and High Country Bank. They drew up a couple different things because there's some small differences between the two. The rate is significantly better at Webster long term. They do have a little bit of a buyout where if you call it at 3 years or 5 years, there's a little bit of a premium where High Country Bank doesn't have that. And so High Country Bank in the very short term is a slightly better rate. However, if you carry this COP out long term, Webster gets better. So we talked about it quite a bit. I mean, I have an interest in keeping things local, but at the same time, the rate's significantly better with Webster long term. And I think probably what's going to happen is in 3 years, you're going to get my recommendation that you should keep the money from the sale of Kesner in your cap account, and you should earn, if the interest is still above 4.3, then you should keep it there and continue to pay it off and earn money off of that money and use it as your cash flow solution. So I would probably make that recommendation in 3 years. So for that, I think Webster is a better deal. That's going to be kind of my recommendation of which bank you go with. But I certainly can understand at the same time, I think it's good for public knowledge to understand we're considering both of those banks.
I'm just going to ask questions. Let's go process first. Everyone understands if you vote yes, right, you're powering that resolution, which allows to go forward and start signing the bank documents, closing documents, and various things. That's anything on process, making sure if people voted yes, you know what you're voting for, right? Second thing is I need you guys to say out loud which bank. So the recommendation is Webster as the best rate, particularly when you get past 3 years, it gets better. That's where it is a better financial decision. And so, but you do have that clarity and can ask questions if you want to look at the kind of the number 2 one and look at it from more of a short-term perspective in that sense. So those are the second thing to talk about maybe.
I mean, my preference would be to keep the money local. I'm looking at the bottom line here. There's like a $75,000 difference.
Mm-hmm.
Over $4 million. That's about 1%.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a big enough difference for me to move money outside the community.
I think it's a big enough difference for me.
I love it.
I think philosophically, Jen, are you looking at this? If you look at this piece, Aaron, jump in if I'm explaining incorrectly. It probably will be a different makeup of the board in 3 years, but it's actually less expensive if we go with High Country with the intent of paying it off in 3 years. Remember, this is the cart is before the horse. We needed the money to move Horizons so we can sell Horizons, right? And then we put that into this. That's what the COP is for. And then once we have that money, we can pay it off as it happens, or we can take Aaron's recommendation if depending on the interest rates, we can make more money if we keep that in our cap reserve. Is that the right fund? And so it's a guess on what that future board is going to want us to do, because it's less expensive. Aaron, if we pay it off in 3 years, it's less expensive for High Country Bank.
Yeah, so if you look at those two, I mean, if you pay it off because there's no premium on call at 3 years with High Country, it's actually less expensive by about $18,000. I don't know if we're going to want to pay it off in 3 years or not. I mean, that's going to probably be, some of you will still be on the board, maybe many of you. And so that'll be a philosophical question. If it was my personal life, I see a lot of freedom in having no debt. So I like that. When it comes to public dollars, if I can make more money by having it in a bank than paying off a loan, I'm going to advise you to keep it in a bank, and because you can always pay it off if you want to. So I mean, my recommendation is typically going to be what's the cheapest. But at the same time, I went back and forth on this, and David even said, "What's your recommendation?" I was like, I struggle with it because my value is to keep things local, and at the same time, almost every decision I'm going to recommend is going to be what's the one that keeps the most money in the district. So, so I'm comfortable with either one of these, to be honest with you, and I would support either one of them, especially when you look at the fact that another possibility is if you look at the column on the left with Webster, you may choose to refund this for savings down the road if rates drop. And so if that's the case, you're not going to pay it to maturity anyways, and you may look at another solution for financing. So that paid through maturity may not even matter. So,
well, when you're talking about keeping money in the district, I would argue buying local keeps money in the district, even if you're paying more upfront, because those dollars recirculate in our community.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I agree with that, and I like the idea a lot more for the small, especially for the small percentage. You keep it locally, and you figure this amount is a lot more probably to High Country than it is Webster. I have no idea who Webster is, but it might be significant. And also just for future loans, I know it's good to have a good relationship with local banks. I don't know if we would need a future loan this size or smaller or something like that, but it might be nice to have a set up relationship with them.
Yeah, and if we truly don't know that we would be paying it off or not, if we are taking a gamble there with more money, we would want to take the gamble on a local business.
Is there any way
truly
to?
Don't know.
Sorry. Yeah. Is there any room for negotiation? You probably already did that.
I mean, after you select somebody, you can then sit down with them. So that was an opportunity that me and David did talk about. And I do think we have a really good relationship with iCountry, and I would feel comfortable. And I honestly, that's where I was struggling a little bit because I agree with you on the local part. I also thought there's other local bids too, though. And it's at what point do you say, well, we're only going a few percentage points higher, and how do we pick which local bank? And I know the argument too is there's only one local bank. I know that's the motto of some of them. So I think it's, that's where, again, you start to sit down and say, well, how do we make the best decision? And so usually I'm going to say, same with a contractor. If two contractors come in and say, I'm bidding this at $100,000 cheaper, I'm probably going to tell you I recommend them. But if you go with the local person, I'm not going to be upset about that. So, and actually for me personally, it'd be really easy. And I'd like to work with iCountry because I already work with them and they have done really well by us in terms of our other accounts. So I have no qualms with supporting them and giving them the business in that way.
So to clarify, David, do you need us to make a decision as a board on which bank we should go with?
Yeah, I would like to have that as an amended budget. I think that's best for the lawyers and the bankers.
I mean, one thing I was just going to say is I don't know if any of you attended scholarship night, but High Country Bank does also give scholarships to our students.
Really good scholarships.
I mean, I don't remember how much, but I know that Nikki was up there presenting. So
They do very right by us.
And I
So
think
David,
too,
you-
since we don't know what interest rates are going to do, I mean, yes, if they're going to be high, it'd be nice to keep the money in the bank, but that's kind of a gamble.
No, totally.
I mean, obviously, so are we feeling more like we would want to pay it off? Can we, I mean, if you don't, I guess it's not a huge loss.
Yeah, I mean, from what I'm hearing, I think most people are saying go with option 2, which is iCountry. I think that's totally appropriate. I have no problem with it. I know me and David, neither one of us have any issue with it. I'll just say this too publicly, like I'm always going to push that we go with lower rates because even if we have a good relationship with somebody locally, I don't operate on handshakes. You still have to come in and be competitive to get the business at some point. So, and they are competitive in this case, but that's something where if you get too far down the line of, well, they're the people we always use, and then all of a sudden you get into dangerous situations, and I'm just always going to push back a little bit on that. So, and I will say after we select the vendor, I'll probably go meet with them and see if there's any room for potential, but we can't do that. You can't do that with a bunch of different people until you've selected your vendor.
and do we have any idea on the numbers, like if we paid it off sooner, like what the cost, like the real estate numbers that we've gotten for what we can sell the current HEA building for?
Well, I mean, you're going to have, if you just do Kesner, right? Like, I mean, the contract's been approved. Are we allowed to talk about ranges or no? Is that not a case? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wanting.
Then I don't know that we
like
can
with
talk
what
about.
we're thinking with the sale of other facilities, do we come in at this number to be able to pay it all off?
With all facilities that you've looked at, like if you're looking at selling all of the assets, then yeah, you'll come above this number.
Okay. So it is possible to pay it off before the 3 years.
It is. And I think what Aaron's going to tell you is each time you get a piece of the puzzle realized versus theoretical, you get to make a decision on whether you want to try and gain interest on that. Because you got to look at your cash flow versus your debt service. And I think there's a couple cash flow solutions that Aaron's got going that I think are going to help us out and give you options when it comes to that choice when another asset is moved.
Yeah, and as mentioned, it may or may not be us.
Right.
So trying to leave future boards with the best possible options.
I think where I stand, I might be with Jen. I am very comfortable with our relationship with High Country Bank, and we help them be prosperous with the funds that we have there with them. And so I think I might want to go for, if you look at each option, I think that I would like, at some point, at different points, it's a significant difference. More than 75,000.
75 is the biggest.
Yeah, that's if you go all the way to maturity.
So
Second difference
So
is
is
like 21K.
is the River Guide math. Maybe we should why don't we, you need the guidance from us, is that correct?
I do need the
You
guidance
For
from
that
you.
as your, for your
So
leadership
I think
style.
part of your motion, I think Matt, you made the original motion if I remember correctly, Kim.
So let's just vote on one.
Then I think could you amend your motion and say we would like to select High Country to move forward with the COP?
Is that what everybody's saying?
Well, we have to vote on it.
You have to vote
Yeah.
on it, but I need to have that vote there, and then
And that's how we can filter us out.
if it doesn't pass, then you would
Go
put
the
another
other way,
motion on
yeah.
the table to go with Webster.
To amend the motion to approve the COP with the amendment that High Country Bank would be selected as the participating lender.
Jen, would you,
Do you-
are you
Kim?
Yep, Jen was our second.
As a part of that, do you have to also approve the resolution, or is that part of that whole thing?
I think it's all the same.
Okay. Okay. Just making sure the
Yes.
wording is right for whatever you need.
And Jen, you seconded the amendment. Thank you. Second. Any further discussion?
I apologize. I was
Hope you're
doing
fine.
I'm still just kind of trying to read the resolution.
We can take a breath.
it. I think I know how it's going to go.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Mandy, too. Like, I think it's fair to look at. Our legal has been involved in this process pretty heavily.
Okay.
They're on every email between Stifel. Kutak is also doing a lot of the title and things like that with us, and
Okay.
our legal is on that. In fact, they're working, and some of the things on the resolution and on the, like I said, on the actual documents for closing, they're going to change as we get closer. So it's,
Okay.
I will be keeping you informed on all of those things as they happen. But since we don't have a meeting and you can't take action for 2 months, in order to get this going, we have to. So, but that being said, I'm not trying to force you to vote on a
And so
resolution
the
that I'm
main
squeaking
kind of
in
big
here.
thing is this number that it's the 2.295. I think that's the total amount of what we're asking for to take out.
Let me just,
On page
I think I know the
3.
answer, but let me be 100% sure. Yes.
Okay, I just want to have in my head what exact number we are.
Yes, and that's actually every number on here is slightly inflated because I don't know why I got so grammatical there, but it's slightly inflated because they want to make sure that whatever you approve, we're able to make sure we don't have to come back to you and say, like, because the actual number we're looking at is 2.8, but they have not to exceed 2.9 on there because they want to make sure that if something were to happen,
Glass prices go up.
yeah, we don't have to come back and get more action. So the resolution is it's putting barriers on the whole thing.
You ready?
To confirm, we're voting to go with High Country Bank, to approve this and to give it the COP to High Country Bank.
Correct. You're approving the resolution, everything, and we'll move forward with High Country Bank as the lender.
Ready? Dr. Breckenridge Pettit.
Hey.
Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs.
Aye.
Mrs. Lumber.
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
And Ms. Schickman.
Aye.
Okay. So we need to return then to E, since we just approved F,
So we are looking at, yes, we approve the
our
2025
24-25 budget. I need a call for a motion to approve the 24-25 budget.
I'll move.
Thank you, Mandy, and a second.
Second.
Thank you, Jen. We're in discussions. Are you ready to go?
Yes.
I apologize.
No, yeah, that's okay. All right. I mean, the budget is the same as last month. You went through all the process for the most part last month, but we have to post it for a month. We did that. We had our listening session at 4:30 tonight. Nobody came, which is becoming usual during the budget planning sessions, to my understanding. So there's no changes being recommended at this time. There's no community input that would suggest that we need to make any changes. Is there any other questions?
What percent are we in with our funding philosophy? That's the one question I have.
Yep. So we were at 101.1 is where we finally ended up, but I think there's a couple variances in there. We're still hiring people. So I've had 3 or so positions that have come in currently, or somebody has resigned since the final budget was presented last month, and that's changed things. So I think we're actually below 100 when we get to or below 101 when we get to our amended budget at this point. So I'm pretty happy with that.
I'm very comfortable.
Plus revenue streams, right?
Yep, revenue
The
streams.
budget's not, and there was another one that came up this last 2 weeks it's another assumption that's not in the budget in a positive way. It's turning out Ascent students are not in our enrollment growth numbers. So now we have 9 students, possibly 10. That creates another funding revenue that will be positive. That'll increase our revenue and allow us to consider in our amended budget, spend more on people or programs.
Okay, and what's the latest gossip on the BS factor?
So yeah, I mean, I'm really, really encouraged. They've gone through the full legislative session. I don't know where the money's coming from, but they haven't put in anything that's going to go back in with the BS factor. So if we have the growth that they expect, I think we're going to realize all our revenues next year, which is great. I'm still not sure where they're going to find 150 to 300 million dollars, but it's not coming out of schools currently, so that's good news.
Well, and rural funding is still in.
Yep, it's in, and it's now in long term. It's actually in the formula going forward, and the new formula, they actually passed a new formula, which will be starting in the 25-26 year, which gives us a little bit more money in theory. Not a lot, but a little bit more.
A little bit.
Yep. And I also think, like we said, UPK, we do believe we're going to get 3-year-olds. So all of those 3 pieces that we weren't sure about, I think we're going to realize all those revenue pieces. Still waiting on confirmation on a couple, but I think we're looking really, really strong right now.
So David, Aaron, or Jen, when would we know as citizens where they will get that 150 million to 300 million?
I'd love to know if you have an answer to that, Jen.
I don't, and I just keep reading these exciting press releases. Like, that sounds make believe, but cool. Good job.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, they've continued at that.
It's not clear.
They have another bill out there to reduce taxes, and they have another, and they're
it's
great.
amazing.
But by law, Colorado has to balance the budget, so I don't know where it's going to come from. So I'm still skeptical.
They've
But
taken it out of us before, so
It doesn't add up.
but I have followed it the whole way, and they haven't changed anything. And the legislative session is finished. So
Key thing to know on that piece is when you vote yes for your budget, we didn't hang our hat on that piece, so that if it is realized, and that'll be great, we'll put it on people and programs. And if it's not, then we're fine, and it's not going to disrupt us at all. So in a very stable place, and I feel very good about that.
All right, you ready?
we are.
Dr. Breckenridge Pettit.
Aye.
Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs.
Aye.
Mrs. Lundberg.
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
And Ms. Schickman.
Aye.
Okay, that completes our action items, and now we're going to board reports. Right? Because we have hopped around,
You
and I
did it.
think I've
You did it
kept track.
I think
Okay.
you're all good.
Okay, we hopped around all over the place. All right, so Miss Mandy,
We have a meeting on Thursday, hopefully a 15-minute meeting, because we just have to do the final budget approval. So there's really nothing else.
I think the
And
other
can
thing,
you-
we did hire a
Right.
new BOCES, we'll say SPED coordinator. So it is a BOCES employee, but is fully dedicated to Salida School District on our schedule. Will work with Will and I directly. We have not had a SPED director or SPED coordinator like this since Jimmy. So well before my time, over 20 years. So we weren't sure about this change. It's not going to increase our budget. It's a wash in terms of how all the ins and outs work with BOCES. And we are very lucky this individual, Heather McFadden, accepted the position. We're very excited. She's a psychologist by training, has worked with our Early Childhood Council. And I think she'll be able to really help us support her staff, particularly starting with the Early Childhood Center and getting them the special ed stuff and understanding our process locally. I think we got very, very lucky, and we're very blessed to have her on the team. And I think this is a better structure for BOCES. And so first semester, it'll have a lot of my attention, making sure that it stays in sync and is not a disruptive innovation, but a constructive one.
and BOCES did a restructuring, and they kind of rearranged how they put their humans in the districts. Do you want to teach us a little bit about that?
I mean, it's mainly what David just said,
Is
is
that
that
one
instead of
specific?
having like shared coordinators between different schools,
they're in
each
buildings.
district has their own coordinator.
So each district does,
Mhm.
okay, regardless of size.
Yeah, so there's 4 coordinators between the BOCES for each district.
And they were able to hire all 4?
I don't know. Do you know if they have?
They have been able to hire all 4 of them. Obviously, that's for other people to talk, but I'm kind of partial. I think we always get the best. So
Better. Okay. Thank you, Mandy, for doing that. Okay, Facilities Committee is Joe and Karen. The homework for both of you is if you want to be within that contractor, architect, customer, what was that acronym? Owner. if you want to come in every once in a while just for a little bit of oversight.
That's fine with me. I mean, if Joe's.
You feel comfortable?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for doing that.
Sure.
Okay, big communications.
um,
Some really good
on-
things, yeah.
Yes, working on the website. It's all kind of, I keep saying it's like behind the magic curtain right now because you can't see it. But it will be a magic, like the old website goes away and the new website is there.
Like all in one day.
All just, yes. Like you
Will it
flip
be a
the
new
switch, so.
internet address?
It should not be, no, but it's, yeah, so you can't see it right now. I'll see if I can get some screenshots, but, Aptigee is the name of the company. And they just do school websites and district websites. And they do the app part as well. Yep. And I love their communications tool so far as like being able to push the same message out, basically on all the platforms at all the same time with one push of a button. It's magic.
When you think,
I do feel like everything's sort of there when people say on Facebook, like,
Yeah.
yes, this is open text, and you just Google
It's
it,
like
and
right
it's
there.
like,
Yeah.
there,
Yes.
it's like,
Yes. So, and I do think,
right, it's already been in.
yeah. So anyway, so forward progress, you just can't get yet.
So when do you have a rough estimate of when you're going live, or do you not want to put a pen in the map?
July 19th.
July 19th?
Oh,
How
Okay.
about that?
There you
So,
go.
and then will we have to do another big education campaign to get
Yes. And that was
Okay,
the
part of
apps
the press release.
downloaded?
Yeah,
Okay.
and the timing of it is, with that back to school push and like
Remember there,
get the
you
new
know,
app and all that good stuff.
And then all the
app,
people
and then
that
there's
say, "Why? How do you know what's going on?" Blah blah blah.
But it kind of streamlines all the communications channels. So for those people that get their news on Facebook, or those people that get their news through their email or whatever, like makes it much easier for me. So
I want to add
I'm
one other
excited.
thing just to communications. It doesn't really fit here, but doesn't fit anywhere else. We are working with our local Salida PD. They really have a strong interest over the summer. So July 10th, they've rented our facility for all of our local agencies. So think EMS, fire, and police being your dominant ones, to do an active shooter drill. And so you'll see communications coming out from Kim. Will probably be the lead PIO in that piece. We're really just observers. This isn't our drill or really for us. This is about our agencies seeing how their systems and expectations work together. I think they've designed a good drill from everything we've seen so far. It should be positive. But I just want to make sure you're aware of that piece. It's not like we're going to have teachers involved. Also, July 10th, if you are somebody who wants to come and be an observer of that drill, we can set you up as board members. I think you might have an interest in that, some of you, not all of you.
Participant.
Not a participant, but absolutely not. But as an observer, yes. We can get you set up in that space, and you can give feedback on spaces that you want to.
Will other boards and citizen agencies be there as well to observe their?
I don't. It is not a citizen thing. It's not like anybody.
No, I mean
interested.
so
But
the
let's say the
county
city council,
commissioners,
or
the county commissioners, or the city council.
I'm sure if they had an interest in that,
As
right.
you say, and there's
I would want to if I were them.
as you say, and there's tactical pieces too. They don't.
So, but it
tactically
is
want everyone
it
to
is
know
open
all
if you
of
guys have an interest in that. It's not exclusionary.
Right.
I just want to make sure it's out in the public. You'll see us communicating about that over the summer. That's July 10th. And a lot of the reasons is people don't think about, like, when did you do the last drill? You have to think about how much turnover you have in some of those
Since then.
spaces, particularly those frontline officers or a frontline EMS person. They may not have been at the last opportunity to get that training. And so we need to keep these kind of frequencies up. I think this is a good way to handle it. So we're excited to partner with the PD as they're leading this
They're the lead.
space.
Similar to what they did this in BV last summer, right? Or 2 summers
2 years ago. Yep.
recently,
And so
yeah.
they've learned from that and they're trying to make a better drill from that piece. We did it in 2017 and then COVID hit and we fell out of the habit. So I'm excited. And as for people know, I mean, we still have the SWAT team regularly. About every other month, they take over a building and they do their practice drills. It's very common in our space. But this is about interagency operations and trying to work that stuff work. Mr. Waddell is a backup incident commander for us. I'm out of town, so he'll be kind of overseeing that piece for this drill.
Does anybody have questions or concerns about that? Nope. So let's go ahead and move on to CASB. Jen.
All right, I'm just going to say some nice things about CASB because I don't always. I'm getting through the legislative wrap up. It's long, but this is the first time where I feel like I've really noticed them communicating what impact they have on legislation, right? And maybe something that they think overreaches, working with the governor to get it vetoed, even though it's gone through, getting changes to legislation that seems too aggressive. And there were, I think they said 700 bills. Not all education, but still, that's a lot going on at the State House. So I don't have anything more specific than that, other than, I don't know, seems like they're on top of it right now and doing a good job in preventing less than ideal legislation,
Right.
which I support.
Thank you, Jen, very much for that.
We'll just interrupt. If you have a chance to email Kim now about your interest in going next December, first week of December, to the CASB convention. If you already know you're out of town with family or something of that nature, can you let us know? Because they're actually opening up registration tomorrow for the conference, which is not the same as the lodging, which is the more competitive race. So Kim and Brett trying to get you guys all registered and signed up. If you already know you're not around those dates, if you could let us know, because that'll just get us more targeted and get as many rooms as we can for you guys. Have a good spaces.
Say those dates again.
Hold
Kim?
on,
I think it's 6, 7.
She'll bring it up.
Okay.
like they always just have their most.
They're not
most
nimble.
upcoming one on the top of their page.
I feel like I put it on my schedule while we were there. And
December 5th through the 7th.
Okay, thank you.
So it seems really far out, but registration's opening up. So December 5th through the 7th. Obviously, it's so great when everybody is able to do that. I know it's a burden on families potentially, but we, I think as a team, grew this last year significantly as we struggled through things, and I think it was great. So.
And we missed their call for presentations. I can just blew it off. Okay, thank you, Jen. Ben, District Advisory Council. Well, there may not be an update because it's the end of the academic year. That's fair.
We didn't. I didn't miss anything.
Nope. No updates. So
Thank you.
I just wanted to see you scoring for a second or two.
Okay. Right, and DAC has some really great things that are going on. And then policy audit update. I've expressed interest to still work on policy. So if you have that interest in general, may die 10 years early, but but if you have interest.
Yeah, I'm hoping to do all my reviews this summer. We'll see how much my intent happens. It'll be the J book policy. J book is your student policies. That's kind of the echo of the G policies. It's not as hard because you're not having to bargain them, but it is thick and dense and has a lot of tendrils and interrelationships between those policies. So that'll be the complicated one. That could be the one that our aspirations, we might fall short next year.
That might have your fingerprints on it.
As an ex-principal, it would be very good then.
Okay, our next, what's that?
Just sitting here doing nothing.
Let's first talk about agenda review. Is anybody interested in doing agenda review?
We're looking to the August agenda review.
Right, we're going to miss each other in July, so August agenda review would be. Is that what? August 13th?
The meeting will be the
13th. So then it's the week before.
Like August 6th.
For sure on the 6th,
Ish.
I could commit to it because I know I have to be here for registration and people night and all sorts of other things that day.
So Mandy can do it.
But I don't want to commit to other days that week.
Okay, well, that seems a little tight. Well, I can help unless somebody's fired up to do it.
I would like to join you just to see what it looks like, but I don't want to be but if I could sit in.
I think that you're more than able to do the agenda review.
You're good on your own. We just can't have 3.
Oh, you can't.
Joe
I'll do it later.
Joe will be there.
So Joe will be
there.
there. So
I'll do
yeah,
it
you're
next
just oversight for Joe. Good luck.
It's really helpful because you get a much deeper sense of why we're putting this on the agenda or why what's holding on. So it's really helpful.
It's actually
No,
really
it's
good to do.
really, yeah.
I
Third
think
on
you
the
should-
list. It was really, really good.
I think you should do it.
It was,
I'm putting her down.
in case she has
August
no,
what?
6th.
Rip off. Well, sometime the week before, I'll
Sometime, it's-
confirm as we
They
get
try to
closer.
aspire
Give
to
you
this
options.
Tuesday.
I just was being tight on my schedule that last week. I don't want to be
Yeah,
too
no.
committed before the kids go back to school.
Times 3. Okay. All right, and then let's talk about do you want to talk about the August
Work session.
grind?
Yeah, the work session there.
That's a legal term.
So I think the first question is, we've at times as a board and across iterations done it on a Friday. It's a long day, 8 to 4. Its main goal is everyone, after percolating all summer and getting it, saying, here's something I really want to move forward. I want to understand how this priority for this annual year fits into a larger scale effort, kind of strategic planning efforts. So it's a chance for all of us to discuss. I try and make sure I come with a plan already rewritten, so we can kick those things around. If you want to do it on a Friday or Saturday, a Friday can be inconvenient for people with jobs, but it also doesn't impact your weekend quite as hard. So you guys just need to let me know Friday or Saturday, and then we can pick the next to last, the 4th weekend or the 5th weekend of August. There's 5 weekends. And Friday or Saturday?
I can do either Friday.
Friday would be amazing if possible for others.
It's probably been, yeah, your practice. There's a lot
Well, it doesn't matter to me. I don't work on Friday.
Okay. So
Matt?
Joe,
Matt?
Joe, I'm thinking about Joe too.
I think if I give him enough lead time, he's able to do that stuff.
Okay.
Can you get off? Can you get free
Um,
if it's early enough?
yeah. That's true.
Yeah, I was kind of hesitant. Yeah,
It is a hesitant, yeah, but I can make it work.
that might. Yeah, or a Saturday. because
Saturday
that-
would be better.
I mean, a
but-
Saturday is
but-
not.
but-
Saturday.
There you go.
Just can we not do the 24th due to an outbreak?
August.
Great.
We
That's
could
a
look at the
Sunday.
31st.
Not miss that.
The 31st is
Labor
Labor
Day
Day
weekend.
weekend. That wouldn't be my
That's a
preference.
bad decision. So then I'm going to say between that, then we're back to Friday the 23rd.
I can do 23rd, but not
Oh my God.
or
Back
do
to
17th.
Or the 30th.
Saturday the 17th.
Oh, wait, no,
That's-
that's still Labor
I
Day.
know everyone's discussing their calendars. I'm going to wait a second.
I was
People are
on the,
trying
I
to
was in the wrong
process.
year.
Jody's looking. I could go for Saturday the 17th or Friday the 23rd. Just
Yeah,
Can we do the 23rd and use that as date
That-
one?
that
Can we
makes
give it a
sense.
second? Look at your calendar. Friday the 23rd.
That cuts back on my overtime.
No.
Y'all, but
Actually, it does because it affects our budget. So
for my extra however
We
long I'm
will.
here.
We will take care of Kim.
we don't want
It's
to
all good.
always have
I'm,
to pay
you tell me when
overtime.
you need me there, and Friday's slightly better.
She'll get more fishing out of it one way or the other.
That's a true story.
All right,
go back.
Matt, we're going the 23rd. I'm just going around the horn,
Okay.
looking for nods. We will start to plan that, and if we run into a snafu, we would just do that upstairs. Unless you guys would like me to, I can work with someone a little more local, like Mount Princeton, and they sometimes will give me a space, but some people would just prefer to stay on closer to their home, and
I mean, that
that's
sounds closer to my home.
I'd rather just stay closer. And
plan then to be at Oak Street upstairs. That's
So
where
that's
you
easy
can
for you.
expect that. And as we get closer, we'll be working on that agenda because you kind of have to balance that first
Yes.
August
Yeah.
agenda up against starting school, up against you haven't set all your priorities. And so there's a couple things there, but now we can get it all set.
Is there a way to email the last year's version of this?
You should
and
have it in your
blank.
board packet.
a blank one of this?
Both
Think-
should be in your
both are in the board
packet.
packet.
Okay.
In theory.
If you
Well,
can't find
I
it,
don't know
Matt,
if it was in the board packet. I know it was in his
I-
videos.
I saw it. I found it in the board packet. It's in the board packet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just make sure, and I think I PDF'd it because the Word version is really tricky.
It's for sure in there. Like I read it.
but Matt,
Is it-
if it doesn't work, just let me know. I'll get you.
Yeah, you can, yes.
Of course, of course, of course. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Jody, you don't get to-
Any other comments or agendas or concerns? Speak now. Anything else? Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
So moved. Time is, don't need a second.
45.
Jody, nice.
45.
All right.
You tell Jim you're so much more efficient.
Everyone go ahead and check your mics. Make sure they're turned off.
Josh, we get that.